Did you really want to run away that badly? Then you shouldn't have gotten caught in the first place, he said, before stabbing her with the sword in his hands. Imagine waking up from a fantasy novel where your own husband slaughtered you, only to meet the same man in your real world. This funny and dramatic manhwa is titled For Your Perfect Ending. Please like and subscribe for more episodes like this. In every romance fantasy transmigration story, the heroine who ends up inside a book always gets a happy ending. Whether she possesses the body of a villainess or just an extra, the result is always the same. In the end, she becomes the main character and gets her perfect ending. Even the male lead, who at first dislikes her because of misunderstandings, eventually falls in love with her and protects her. Of course, that's how it usually goes. But this story is different. In this one, she ends up dying at the hands of a man who is obsessed with her. Did you really want to run away that badly? Then you shouldn't have gotten caught in the first place, he said, before stabbing her with the sword in his hands. She died by the hands of a man who refused to let her go. A man who didn't want her to escape. And instead of running away from him, maybe the only place she could return to was her creator. After dying in the world she was transmigrated to, she woke up in her original world. Every single day, thinking about that incident made her so mad. That morning, as usual, her uncle called out to her loudly, so loudly her ears almost bled, telling her to come eat breakfast. She knew she needed time to get used to this, because in that world she woke up every morning to gentle maid voices, not her uncle's loudspeaker voice. But of course, that was over now. So what if it was a bad ending? She came back to her normal world after all, so it was a win-win, right? Yoon Seom got dressed for school like she used to and opened the curtains confidently, saying, "My real story starts now." Seom joined her uncle for breakfast, and of course she enjoyed eating kimchi stew. She was so happy that she could finally taste it again, a taste you could never find in another world. Her uncle was amazed seeing her eat so much. A girl who used to only poke her food was now eating like she had been starving forever. "Yoon Seom, you've been acting like a totally different person lately," he said. She paused, thinking to herself. After all, she had lived 20 years in another world. So yes, she was different now. After Seom finished her food, she thanked her uncle and picked up her bag, about to leave. As she wore her stockings, her uncle asked if she was sure returning to school immediately was a good idea. "You should just rest for like a year," he suggested. She glanced at him, showing that she was perfectly fine. Apparently, Seom had been unconscious for 3 months in this world. No one would believe her if she told them she spent an entire lifetime in another world during those 3 months. It sounded ridiculous, but she was glad she came back to this world while still young. It would have been terrible if she had woken up here after 20 years had passed. Holding onto the door handle, Seom suddenly called out to her uncle. He immediately asked, worried, if she felt any pain. But instead, she turned around cheerfully and said that she loved him. He was totally shocked. Of course, who wouldn't be? A niece who had never once said, "I love you," suddenly saying it out of nowhere? "You're getting weird again, aren't you?" he asked nervously. When she transmigrated, she regretted never telling her only family, her uncle, that she loved him. So after finally waking up, she promised herself she would tell him every day. "What's wrong with you, kid? Go to school already," he shouted, and she rushed out. With his arms folded, her uncle couldn't help but think, she was really different now. Some say her uncle is hot, but you guys need to wait and see the second male lead. He's the definition of hot in human form. On her way to school, Seom overheard some students praising a Yandra crown prince from a novel. She was triggered immediately. They really need to get stabbed by an obsessive Yandra to come to their senses, she thought bitterly. What's so hot about a Yandra? She mumbled angrily, saying they should burn all romance fantasy novels in this world. Every single one of them. Poor girl, she was traumatized. And honestly, who wouldn't be? Yoon Seom was suddenly startled when a girl jumped on her, shouting, "Long time no see." "I heard you were seriously sick, and I was worried about you," one of the girls said, while the other two stood at a corner laughing. Poor Yoon Seom almost forgot about her. This brat existed in her life even before she transmigrated. In most reincarnation stories, the transmigrators always had miserable lives in their original world, which made them never want to go back after experiencing a better life. In Yoon Seom's case, it was the same. At school, she was timid and always alone. Unfortunately, she got on Kim Gabin's bad side and ended up spending every single day in school miserably. That was how things had always been until today. "Wow, Yoon Seom, you look so bright now. Guess you weren't that sick after all," Kim Gabin said. Seeing how quiet Seom was, Gabin raised her hand angrily to slap her, only to freeze in shock when Seom caught her wrist midair. Yoon Seom couldn't believe it. She was once bullied by this bunch of high schoolers? There was no way she would let that happen again, not after surviving 20 years of deadly traps and schemes. "I've been training in self-defense since I was 5, Yoon Seom said calmly. She kicked Kim Gabin to the ground as the girl cursed loudly. Seom looked at them with confidence and warned them that she wasn't going to let her life fall apart twice. They better stay quiet and stay out of her sight. Back in class, she couldn't help but notice how the class lineup had changed after being away for so long. Still, everything worked out well for her. New class. New her. She boldly told herself she would make friends and never live a pathetic life like before. She decided to start with the group sitting in front of her, chatting happily. It felt easier to make friends in this modern world than in that cruel noble fantasy world. "Did you see Haewon's picture on IG yesterday?" one girl asked. The boy replied, saying he was really good-looking and that his followers had skyrocketed. Yoon Seom jumped into the conversation excitedly. "Who's Haewon?" she asked, thinking he was some kind of celebrity. Everyone was surprised that she didn't know him. One of the girls told her that Haewon was their classmate, while another added that her sickness must have shaken her brain, because he had been famous since their freshman year. What kind of guy is he to be that famous? Yoon Seom asked anxiously, thinking to herself that she never paid attention in school before. They explained that Haewon was very handsome, and not only that, he was also rich and kind. Even girls from other schools came just to see him. Yoon was shocked. There was someone that was good-looking in her school and she never noticed? Speak of the devil. Haewon walked in at that exact moment, and the girls began shouting cutely, calling him Appa in sweet voices. "Holy crap," Yoon Seom muttered the moment she saw him. She froze. Shocked. Unable to believe her eyes. This was Haewon? He walked toward her and said it was his first time seeing her. Then he suddenly remembered. She was the one who had been sick. "Nice to meet you. I'm Lee Haewon," he introduced himself with a smile. Yoon Seom completely freaked out. Because standing in front of her was the same man from the fantasy novel she transmigrated into. Killian Del Winfred. The obsessive fool who killed her with his own hands. How is that even possible? This had to be a joke. Just when she thought she could finally live a normal life, this happened. If you're still watching and this got you hooked, don't forget to like and subscribe for more interesting stories like this. Haewon noticed that her expression had changed. She didn't look well. Yoon Seom wondered why the hell he was here, but then she remembered something Killian once told her. "If we're not meant to be together in this life, then we'll definitely meet in your next life. You can never escape me. Are you okay? Does it hurt somewhere?" Haewon asked, reaching out to touch her. Yoon Seom angrily thought to herself that he should leave her alone in this life already. Before he could react, Yoon grabbed his hand and flipped him over. To everyone's shock, he slammed right into the ground. Oh no. She didn't just do that. Did she? What the hell just happened? Your first day back at school, Yoon Seom. The moment she realized what she had done, it was already too late. She knew instantly she was doomed. "You're really strong," Haewon said from the ground, smiling. "Young man, you really shouldn't be smiling. That's when things get worse." It was lunch period, and Yoon Seom sat in a corner, thinking to herself that she was completely screwed. Her new school life flashed right before her eyes. She knew it must have looked really weird. She had thrown down the most popular kid in school. In the eyes of the students, she must look like a monster now. "Guess I just confirmed it again this year," she sighed. 0 friends. The thought of regressing crossed her mind, but to her surprise, the kids she had talked to earlier came over and asked to join her for lunch. Yoon was shocked. Someone still wanted to be seen with her after all that drama? They sat down and asked how she was able to do that, because she handled it like a really strong girl. Feeling nervous, Yoon told them she had been training in self-defense since she was little. They told her not to worry, since Haewon himself said it was fine. After all, he startled her first, right? They praised her for having such strong self-defense skills and kept talking about it over and over during the meal. It honestly felt like forever. Yoon was a bit bored that they wouldn't change the topic, but still. It felt nice. Talking with friends like this was fun. Her mind suddenly flashed back to when she was still inside the novel. One night, Yoon held a dagger, threatening to stab Killian if he stepped any closer. But he didn't stop. He kept walking toward her, calling her Ines, grabbing her trembling hands, and asking how she could even stab him when her hands were shaking so badly. He asked if she wanted him to help her. To her horror, he pushed the dagger into his own chest like a madman, smiling as blood spilled out. He said it was easy, so easy, yet she was the one hesitating. He told her that if she wanted, he could rip out his heart for her. That was when she cried and screamed at him that he was completely insane. Killian only laughed, rubbing the blood across his face, saying it was a shame she was only realizing that now. Yoon Seom opened her eyes in shock. It was just a dream. She sat up, breathing hard. What a shitty dream, she muttered. She was always afraid of memories like that appearing in her dreams, and yet it still happened. Lately, she hasn't been sleeping well. But at least there was one good thing, she had made some cute friends today. Everything would have been perfect. If that foolish Killian hadn't appeared in this life. Could that guy really be Killian, she wondered. If I look closely, his face isn't exactly the same. But the moment she saw him, her whole body screamed at her to run. With a heavy heart, she thought to herself, she transmigrated into a novel and came back. Which means, he could jump out of a novel too, right? Waiting at the bus stop, Yoon Seom realized the moment the bus arrived that she had forgotten her wallet. If she didn't take this bus, she would be really late. The bus driver asked if she was getting in, and she sadly told him she would wait for the next one. That was when Haewon suddenly showed up and said he would pay for her too. Right. Just when she stopped thinking about him, no, in fact, he was the reason her mind had been so distracted all day. Yoon was surprised, and Haewon smiled, saying it seemed they met again. It felt extremely awkward being on the same bus with him, especially after dreaming about him that morning. Still, Yoon knew she had to thank him for paying, and she did. He told her it was nothing, calling her by her name, and added that they should at least greet each other properly from now on. Watching him smile like that, Yoon wondered why he looked so harmless. She quickly looked away, telling herself she would never get close to him, not even a brush of sleeves, until graduation. At this point, Haewon was starting to wonder what was wrong with her. 10 minutes later, they were still on the bus, and it was completely packed. Yoon was standing right in front of Haewon, desperately trying not to touch him. She kept trembling. The bus suddenly swerved, and the man behind her accidentally pushed her forward. She almost hit her head right on Haewon's chest. The man apologized, but Yoon didn't care. She had succeeded. With pure strength and focus, she managed not to touch him. Yoon Seom. Haewon called out, laughing. Are you blocking people for me like in dramas? Yoon couldn't believe he was laughing. In her eyes, she was literally fighting for her life, struggling with everything she had just to avoid him. He gently pulled her and stood right in front of her. It's usually like this in dramas, he said playfully. Not the other way around. I'm taller than you. Yoon froze. Everyone stared at them. She felt like she was about to lose her mind. She tried her best to avoid eye contact, but Haewon kept smiling at her. This guy is creepy. Could it be he transmigrated from the novel? By the time they reached school, Yoon Seom was already exhausted. Her friends immediately asked why she looked like that and whether something had happened. What kind of person is Lee Haewon? Yoon asked suddenly. Are the rumors about him being nice really true? She sat up straight and added quickly, aren't they just rumors? Her friends stared at her in confusion. Yoon asked if he was secretly rude or something, but the two of them only looked more puzzled. They could tell she was slowly losing her mind. One of the girls said Haewon was completely spotless and that Yoon should just watch him closely herself. She said she would even testify to it. The boy added that he had never heard a single bad rumor about Haewon either. Why do you think they call him half-blood? He said cutely. It's because he's half human and half angel. Yoon's expression changed instantly. Please don't start again, she thought. She was literally confiding in his fans. This was exactly what she should have expected. At that moment, someone placed a juice box on her desk. Yoon looked up. It was Haewon. Drink it, he said with a smile. Consider it payback for watching over me on the bus. Everyone froze, including Yoon Seom. Bro, she wasn't watching you. Too bad it appeared like that. Haewon left, greeting the other students as if nothing happened. Yoon and her friend were still frozen in shock. Are you flirting with Haewon? They panicked, flailing their hands. What is going on? Why would a guy you're complaining about bring you juice, and thank you for watching him? Seriously? Yoon couldn't say a single word. All they could do was bombard her with questions about her relationship with him. In her mind, all she could think was, we were mortal enemies in my previous life. Looking at the juice, she wondered if he had some kind of ulterior motive. Later, during sports class, Haewon played football. When he scored a goal, he lifted his shirt to wipe the sweat off, revealing a perfect six-pack. The girls around him went crazy. Why is Haewon like this? He glows differently. Park Min exclaimed. Luna added, he's in a completely different genre. Meanwhile, Yoon Seom sat in the middle, speechless. She had seen this before. Killian, the man from the novel, had looked just this good when practicing swordsmanship, with maids surrounding him, praising him endlessly. He was exactly the same. No matter how she looked at him, all she could see was Killian. She sighed. Why does everything overlap? A student suddenly announced that the boys and girls would be playing dodgeball. Dodgeball. Yoon thought, shrugging. She didn't think it would be a big deal, until the game began. Yoon Seom left everyone shocked with her outstanding performance. She hit every single student out of the game, one by one. Playing with these high schoolers is nothing, she thought. The other kids complained, claiming it was literally bullying and wondering how she even knew what she was doing. Her friends cheered her from behind, proud as ever. Now, there was only one person left, Haewon. In the novel, Killian had been the crown prince, the strongest swordsman in the empire. No one could defeat him. Yoon had always struggled, eventually being dragged away. If Haewon is really Killian, he should be able to dodge this easily, she thought. But then, she threw the ball. It hit Haewon square on the face. Everyone gasped. Yoon couldn't believe it herself. How did he get hit straight on? His face turned red, and he fell to the ground. The students immediately crowded around him. Oops, did she just knock him out? This is bad. Haewon was taken to the infirmary, and Yoon stayed by his side. She stared at him, bewildered. How could someone with Killian's face sleep so defenselessly? She even pulled out a pair of scissors coldly, briefly wondering if she should just kill him. Her eyes widened in horror at her own thoughts. She couldn't believe she even considered it. This is the modern era, not some empire. Whether he's Killian or not, that's in the past, she reasoned. Just then, Haewon woke up. You came to visit me? He asked. I'm fine. You don't need to worry. Yoon replied, a little flustered. Why did he wake up so suddenly? She thought. Could he have heard me thinking about that? But why are you holding a pen? He asked, and Yoon froze. She couldn't exactly tell him she had considered killing him, could she? But come to think of it, isn't it funny that she's about to kill a strong guy with a pen? Yoon apologized softly. I'm sorry for hitting you in the face with the ball. Haewon burst into laughter. Of course, Yoon had no idea what was so funny. It's really fine, and actually kind of funny at the same time, he said, smiling. How should I put it? You're the first person of your type I've ever met. It's surprising. Come to think of it, it's quite interesting. Yoon was left completely speechless. Killian would never laugh or smile like this. She noticed blood on his neck and leaned in closely. Are you hurt from the fall? She asked, her concern growing. His complexion was pale, and Yoon immediately regretted throwing the ball in the first place. Just as she was about to go get the nurse, Haewon rested his head on her chest. She froze. I feel dizzy from the impact, he said, apologizing. Yoon couldn't believe how close they were. Hey, he said, lifting his head slightly. Can we talk and greet each other like this? Can we be friends? Yoon Seom's heart skipped a beat. After leaving the room, Yoon argued with herself. Haewon seemed kind and harmless, yet she couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. His asking her to be friends wasn't unfamiliar because in the novel, that was exactly what she had said to Killian when they first met as kids. When she first transmigrated into the book, her life was peaceful. She had an ordinary life as a duke's daughter, not the heroine. It didn't seem like she would ever get involved with the crown prince, the original male lead. But one day, she saw a shabby little kid wandering around their estate. Her mouth was full of food, and she could barely speak without covering her mouth, but still Yoon asked why he was so filthy and suggested he come into the house. She promised she would make him warm cocoa if he became friends with her. She reached out to him first, without any suspicion. She served him the warm cocoa, and the poor boy looked at it strangely before bouncing on it like a hungry child. She stared at him cutely, mumbling to herself, he's like a stray cat. Killian's eyes widened when he tasted how delicious it was. He licked every drop of cocoa cutely, then dropped the cup on the table and returned to his alert, serious mode. You knew instantly that it would take a long time before she could get close to him. Immediately, the maid stomped in, asking cautiously what she had brought home. Ines told her she had seen a stray cat in the garden, but the maid panicked, saying she would be in trouble if the Duke found out. The maid concluded that the boy might be a child displaced by war and said she would take him to an orphanage. She dragged Killian by the hands, asking him to come along, but he struggled, refusing. The maid dragged him anyway, despite his strength. He shouted that he didn't want to go to the orphanage. Ines stepped between them, blocking Killian. She told Marion that she didn't have to worry, she would take care of him herself because she wanted to be friends with the boy. Killian was surprised, and Marion tried to talk her out of it. Now thinking about it, Yoon concluded that she had been really naive back then. She had thought she found a harmless little kitten, not realizing it was actually a black-hearted tiger cub. She thought to herself that she wouldn't be that naive in this lifetime. She must find out about Haewon before making him her friend. 1 month later, Yoon had already been watching Haewon closely. The results remained the same. He was kind, initiative, and socially skilled. She was so disappointed that she hadn't found a single flaw in him, which annoyed her because he was the complete opposite of Killian. Yoon was walking to school, lost in her thoughts about proving he was definitely Killian, completely unaware that Haewon was quietly following her from behind. Hi, Seom. He popped up out of nowhere, startling her. Yoon panicked, and he laughed, apologizing for scaring her. She glared at him, thinking to herself that she could never get used to this energy. Haewon asked why she was dressed like that, and why she wasn't wearing her tie. Immediately, Yoon panicked. The disciplinary teacher would surely notice today. To her surprise, Haewon pulled out a red tie and asked if she wanted it. No. What about you then? She asked, confused. He smiled. Well, let it slide if it's me. Yoon remembered that he was the teacher's favorite, but then she hesitated. His niceness felt almost like a mockery, which made her mad. She refused again, insisting she was fine without the tie. Suddenly, she began stretching her body. Haewon watched, confused. Before he knew it, she jumped up, climbed the school fence, and landed inside the school grounds. From the top, she called down, I don't need the tie. I'm not even passing through the gate now. Haewon was amazed. How did you do that? That's so cool. He smiled. Should I try climbing too? She warned him carefully, be careful. I won't take responsibility. Just when Haewon thought he could finally climb up, his eyes widened in shock. He slipped and fell backward. The schoolyard went completely silent. He scratched the back of his head, muttering how embarrassing it was. Then he looked up and saw Yoon laughing out loud. It was the first time he had ever seen her laugh like that. Aren't you laughing way too openly? He asked. Yoon immediately stopped and apologized. She thought to herself, seeing Killian's face doing slapstick comedy is worth living for. Yoon realized something else. She was now looking down at him, and he was down on the ground. Back in the novel, she had always had to look up to him. Looking down on him now felt incredible. Really, then when I'm close to you, I'll bend my knees a bit, he said playfully. She smiled, calling him by his name. Don't betray me, she warned. She silently wished Haewon wasn't Killian. If this was some horrifyingly perfect act, he should at least pretend till the end and not get caught. The quiz results came out, and Yoon immediately saw hers. She couldn't believe it. It was real. Being in another world for 20 years had really affected her. She barely remembered any of the school curriculum. Her friends groaned when they saw her score. Do you even have a brain? One of them joked. Maybe it's time I start training for sports college, Yoon muttered, scratching her head. I'm good with my body anyway. Park Min told her not to give up yet. They still had a year left. They suggested she join group studies. Group studies? Yoon asked, puzzled. They explained that everyone would discuss subjects they didn't understand during the weekends. Yoon stopped panicking and decided she had to give it a shot. How about studying with Haewon? Someone suggested, nodding toward him. He was across the room, being friendly with other girls. Yoon couldn't believe it. They were bringing up Haewon again. They reminded her that he was the top of their class and that he seemed close to her. After all, he had even brought her juice the other time. They suggested that she could disguise their time together as studying, and who knows, maybe they might even fall in love. Yoon held herself back, thinking she should ignore them. She didn't need to do something like that just for her grades. But then she glanced at Haewon. He noticed her looking and smiled happily. She felt her heart skip and looked away immediately. Why does he keep smiling like an idiot? Even this morning, when she told him not to betray her, he had laughed foolishly and promised not to. She wondered why he even said that. He didn't even know what she meant. Yoon shook her head, forcing herself to focus. Haewon is Haewon. I need to fix my real-world crisis first. Later, Yoon Seom helped carry a trash can, walking majestically as she disposed of the trash. For a moment, she felt like a normal high schooler, enjoying the simple, peaceful rhythm of her daily life. But then her eyes widened in shock. She smelled cigarettes. Looking over, she saw some kids gathered in a corner, smoking. And in the middle of them stood Lee Haewon. His face. It was sad, just like the expression Killian always made. Yoon couldn't believe it. Haewon could make that face too. And whenever Killian made that face in the novel, something bad always followed. Is he finally going to show his true colors? She wondered. She prepared to act, thinking she needed to save the boys from whatever was coming. But then she realized these weren't normal kids. They were bullies. She watched closely as they taunted him. Is that all you've got? One of them sneered. Stop looking at us like you're extorting when we're all your friends. Those sneakers are expensive. Mind if I try them on? They look like a limited edition, another added. Yoon Seom couldn't believe it. They were really bullying him. She worried they might provoke him and get hurt. One of them even placed his hands on Haewon's shoulders. Haewon kicked them off immediately. The bullies were shocked, but one grabbed him by the collar, shouting, I've always hated the way you look at us. Yoon panicked. Is he seriously going to get hit? She thought. Her mind flashed with all the happy moments she'd shared with him, and she knew she had to do something. The bully raised his fist, and Yoon shouted angrily, Stop. All of them turned toward her, confused. Who the hell are you? One asked. Yoon froze for a moment. She had stepped in without a plan. There was no way she could take down all of them at once. Thinking fast, she grabbed Haewon. We were assigned class duties together, and he ditched, she said, smiling. Sorry, guys, I'll be taking him for a bit. One of the bullies shouted, What the hell do you think you're doing? Yoon desperately wished they'd let it slide. But then a familiar voice rang out. Yoon Seom. It was Kim Gabin. Yoon froze. She couldn't believe it. She still had to deal with Kim Gabin after the last time. She obviously hadn't learned her lesson. Last time, I was startled and didn't get to deal with you properly. Kim Gabin shouted, signaling the boys to chase them. Yoon immediately blocked Haewon. Step aside. I'll handle this, she told him. One of the guys reached for her. Yoon reacted instantly. She twisted his hand until it hurt, then flipped him to the ground. The rest stared, shocked by her strength. She chuckled. Just let us go already. Don't let her go. She's just a girl. Kim yelled angrily. You knew it wasn't funny anymore. She sighed. I didn't want it to come to this, but we have to run. She grabbed Haewon's hand and started dragging him along. He was surprised, but then he suddenly held her hand firmly, stopping her. Yoon's eyes widened in shock. He wasn't letting go. The two managed to escape the bullies. Once they reached a safe distance, Yoon stopped and breathed heavily. She realized she was still holding Haewon's hand and let go immediately, apologizing. It's okay, he said softly. Then, with a small smile, he asked, Do you want to hold my hand again? Yoon was surprised. She noticed that he was still slightly shaken from the confrontation. She held onto his hand again, gently. Is this enough? She asked. Yes, he said. They sat there for a while, holding each other's hands. Of course, Yoon couldn't help thinking how awkward it felt. It was the weekend, and Seom decided to study with Haewon. While studying, she couldn't help thinking back to the novel, when she used to make Killian's hair while he studied and praise him for looking so adorable. He would reluctantly ask her to join him, but she would tease him, asking why he was always studying. Killian would remind her how she once threw a fit with her father just so he could be enrolled in the same academy as her. Because of that, he had to study hard and stay at the top of his class so he could formally become her knight. He calmly told her that he wanted to stay with her forever. Back then, Ines would blush at those words, not knowing that his obsession was deadly. Seom thought to herself that it was all useless now. Just then, Haewon called out to her, saying there was someone at the window. When she turned around, it was her uncle. He was peeking at them furiously, like a wolf, and she could tell he was cursing with his eyes. Seom instantly knew she was in big trouble because she had told him she was going to study with friends. Her uncle sat across from them, glaring seriously. Seom tried to explain what was going on, but Haewon interrupted. He politely greeted her uncle and confidently introduced himself, saying they were studying together. Seom couldn't help thinking to herself that he was way better than Killian, because back in the novel, Killian used to glare viciously at her family after becoming the crown prince. She smiled, tapped Haewon's head, and said he had grown up so well. Haewon's face turned red, and he couldn't stop himself from blushing hard. This is so cute. She then turned back to her uncle, who was still glaring, and explained that Haewon was the top student in her class, which was why they were studying together. To their surprise, he stood up immediately and asked them to come with him. At first, Seom was worried, wondering where they were going, but he simply took them home and made delicious meals for them. Haewon was so happy and thanked him for inviting him. Seom sat still, staring in confusion, wondering what was going on with the sudden atmosphere. It felt like they were getting along so well without her. After Haewon left, Seom tried talking to her uncle, but he told her he didn't have a problem with her having a boyfriend, as long as he was more handsome and not uglier than him. Seom was shocked and wondered where all of this was coming from. He patted her head, smiled softly, and said he wasn't expecting anything from her. He just didn't want her to get sick. Seom became emotional and hugged him, saying she hadn't told him she loved him today. He cleared his throat and told her to stop with the cheesy talk already. After getting home, Haewon took a bath. When he came out of the shower, he sat on his bed and reached for a photo, staring at it quietly. You wouldn't believe whose photo it was Yoon Seom's, smiling brightly. Haewon grinned obsessively. This is so creepy. What if he really is Killian and is just playing along in this life? The next day, while walking to school, Yoon Seom received a text from Haewon. He was showing her a cute cat picture, and she couldn't help smiling. But then she froze when she saw the rest of the text. Did you remember to bring your tie today? Yoon's expression turned stunned. I forgot again, she thought. Just like usual, she decided to climb over the fence. Thank goodness for martial arts training in my previous life, she muttered, swinging herself over easily. Sorry, master, this isn't what you taught me for, she whispered, landing gracefully on the other side. But then she froze again. Up ahead, she saw two students pressed against each other. Yoon perched on the fence, watching quietly to see what they were doing, and her eyes widened in shock. They were kissing. In school. She couldn't believe it. The guy, with silver hair, noticed her and paused, lipstick still on his lips. Their eyes met. He winked at her, placing a finger to his lips, silently telling her to shut up. Back in class, Yoon couldn't stop thinking about what she'd just witnessed. Don't tell me, did I transmigrate into another novel again? Could this be a school romance titled I'll Kiss You for 5001? She wondered. There's no funny girl as Yoon. Haewon was right. He's never seen her type before. Just then, the classroom door opened. The teacher announced, we have a transfer student joining us today. The students murmured, surprised. The new student entered. I'm Cheon Sion, he said with a bright smile. Nice to meet everyone. All the girls immediately blushed at his cute, handsome face. Yoon, however, froze. That was the same silver-haired guy from earlier. Why is he in my class? She thought. Before she could react, the teacher pointed at a seat in front of her. Sit here. Cheon chuckled. I'm tall. If I sit there, I'll block everyone's view. The teacher agreed and told him to sit beside Yoon Seom instead. Everyone watched as he walked over gracefully, like an angel. Yoon looked away annoyed. I'm about to lose my mind. Please don't remember my face, she thought. Hi, peeping girl. Cheon said cheerfully. Yeah, she's screwed again. Cheon immediately caught the attention of the entire class. Students bombarded him with questions about his height, hobbies, and all sorts of things. It was obvious. This new guy was taking Haewon's place as the most handsome in class. Yoon frowned. Why is he flirting with everyone? I don't like it. First impressions mattered, and after seeing him earlier, there was no way she would like him. She shook her head. He's a walking red flag. I need to avoid him at all costs if I want a peaceful life. Cheon tapped her shoulder. Partner, why aren't you curious about anything? Yoon freaked out. He startled me, she thought. I'm curious about nothing, she replied. He smiled. Our first meeting is already quite memorable. Aren't you curious why I was with the girl? Before he could finish, Yoon quickly covered his mouth with her hands. I'm not curious about your private life at all. Cheon looked surprised. He gently removed her hands and held them close to his chest, drawing her slightly closer. You seem familiar, he said. Yoon froze. Their faces were dangerously close. I'm meeting you for the first time, she said, awkwardly. They separated just as a loud crash came from behind. It was Haewon. He had broken a pot. Sorry. Did I startle you? He asked, chuckling. Yoon rushed over immediately. Are you okay? She asked, concerned. Cheon watched, confused, as Haewon's expression suddenly darkened. Seeing Haewon's face, Cheon muttered to himself, he's actually handsome. Haewon glared at Cheon coldly. Cheon blinked in surprise. What was that look? Did he just glare at me? He could feel the tension between the two from afar and couldn't help but smirk. During lunch, Cheon suddenly grabbed Yoon by the neck. Yoon freaked out, shouting at him. What are you doing? Cheon made a pitiful face. I'm just trying to be friendly. It's my first day. Park Min and Luna immediately swarmed him, all smiles and excitement. They had seen another handsome guy, and of course, they couldn't resist. Join us for lunch, they said, directing Yoon to sit with them. Yoon tried to refuse, but the two girls glared at her so seriously it was impossible to say no. I guess I have no choice, she thought, obviously annoyed. Cheon joined them, and they all sat together. Park Min and Luna bombarded him with questions, asking if he was a model or signed with an agency. It was impossible to eat in peace. Yoon glared at him from across the table. He flirts like he breathes, she thought. She didn't care about anything else. All she wanted was to enjoy her kimchi stew in peace. Just then, someone called her name. She looked up and saw Haewon, tray in hand. Can I sit next to you? He asked. I sensed drama and competition between these two and Haewon. He looks ready to fight for his girl. Cheon is being unnecessarily too close to her. Everyone in the cafeteria watched them from afar. Yoon Seom was literally eating in the middle of the hottest boys in school. She wondered how she ended up like this. How did she get coiled up with the school's most handsome boy and the legendary transfer student? She just wanted to live quietly, but she was clearly far from that with these boys around her like this. Seom didn't care. She shoved her spoon into her meal and began eating. Haewon picked out a stir-fried eggplant, calling out to Seom and asking if she liked it because he didn't. She smiled and said she liked it so much, and he gave it to her. He also asked if she wanted his yogurt. Seom asked why he wasn't eating, but he smiled again and said he was lactose intolerant. He gave it to her too, and the others watched in shock as he even took something off her mouth. Seom looked at the eggplant and smiled, thinking to herself that it was so freaking good. Cheon leaned closer and said he liked eggplants too. She glared at him, thinking, and so what? Before she knew it, he held her hand and shoved her spoonful of eggplant into his mouth. Seom didn't know how to react, but from her expression, anyone could tell she was ready to punch this boy. Cheon chewed it childishly, saying it was yummy. Seom felt like she was burning with rage, and Haewon called out to him, asking if his name was Sion. Cheon was surprised when Haewon told him to tone it down because Seom didn't look comfortable. I'm just joking. Is it uncomfortable? Are you two dating? He asked, and Seom choked on her food. She yelled at him, asking what he was talking about. She told him clearly that they were not dating. Cheon smiled, and the other two friends chuckled, pointing out how Seom had freaked out and was all red now. Seom warned them not to dare make a shipping post about them. I'm just saying. Seom cut him off immediately, telling him to stop already. Meanwhile, Haewon, on the other hand, was barely holding in his anger. Like, bro, chill. Why are you so angry? He's making it too obvious. Back in the class, Seom laid on her desk tiredly, and immediately someone dropped a soda on the desk. It was Cheon. She glanced at him, and he smiled, telling her to drink it because he had just gotten it from the store. He left right away to continue what he was doing, and Seom stared at the drink in confusion. Looking at it, she thought to herself that maybe he was not totally a bad guy. Seom took back her words about calling him a complete jerk as they both served punishment. You must be wondering why they ended up like this, right? 30 minutes earlier, Seom and her friends were heading to class, talking about what to do during midterm. They were surprised when they looked in the other direction and saw Cheon being scolded by the dean. They wondered why and concluded that he must have gotten caught for not wearing his tie. Cheon glanced over and noticed them, but Seom turned around immediately because she knew she was not wearing her tie too, so she had to run. She told her friends they should go back to the store, but they asked why since they had just come from there. She told them she was suddenly hungry. Cheon sneaked up on her from behind, and she froze in confusion. He called her partner with a smile. This time, that name was really true, because they were partners in not wearing a tie. Cheon crossed his shoulder over hers and asked if she would like to join him. Before she could react, he revealed that she was not wearing a tie and quickly reported to the dean. She was so pissed that this foolish boy could not just let it slide. That's the difference between him and Haewon. While kneeling down with her hands up, Cheon could tell how mad she was. He sadly asked if she was really angry at him for snitching. He apologized, saying it was too boring, so he needed a partner. He slowly leaned on her, saying his arms already hurt because he was too delicate. Meanwhile, Seom angrily thought to herself that if only they were in a novel, she would have broken his neck into complete pieces for putting her in this situation. Just then, Cheon remembered something and asked Seom why she did not spread the rumor about him rubbing lips with a girl on the first day. She asked why she would do that, and he replied that people would find it fun. Seom sighed and said she did not find gossiping about other people's business fun, and besides, she did not know anything about him, so it would be weird to talk about someone she barely even knew. Cheon smiled, mumbling to himself that she was such an interesting person. "Hey you, I said hold your arms straighter," the teacher shouted, and they both straightened up. With folded arms, he called them troublemakers. Just then, Haewon walked in. He greeted the teacher politely, and the two noticed him, wondering what he was doing there. The teacher asked why he was there, and he calmly said that he had borrowed Seom's necktie yesterday and did not return it. He offered to serve the punishment instead of her. The teacher scolded him, asking why he would borrow her tie when he was so well behaved, but he could not scold him any longer and said it was fine. Cheon was shocked when Haewon asked if he could go back to class with Seom. Haewon reached out his hand to her, smiling and saying they should go. She jumped up immediately, asking if it was really alright. Cheon couldn't believe that actually worked when they all knew it was obviously a lie. He decided to slip away while the teacher was distracted, but Haewon called out to the teacher, saying they would take their leave. Immediately, the teacher noticed Cheon trying to escape and scolded him to sit back down. He sighed, thinking to himself that this was the worst. He glanced at Seom and Haewon as they were leaving and was shocked to see Haewon's expression. He was literally mocking him with that smile. At this point, I can only say it's 1-0 now. Cheon scoffed, thinking to himself, so that's how he wants to play it, huh? School closed that day, and Haewon stood on the rooftop, looking down at Cheon and his friends as they headed home, talking about what to do. Haewon sadly thought to himself that he wanted things to be different this time, and he seriously didn't want to make her cry again, but there was no progress. No matter how much he tried to decorate it or hide it, it still kept leaking out. Did y'all hear that? So Haewon is indeed Killian. Holy Mary. This is so messed up. All this time, we haven't had Haewon's side view, and this is it? He wondered how he could possibly stay calm leaving her behind. Just then, a clay pot fell right in front of Cheon and would have hit him if he had taken one more step forward. They all panicked and asked where it fell from, only to hear someone call his name. Cheon looked up and coldly mumbled to himself, so it's him. Midterms were over, and when Seom saw her test results, she knew instantly that she was screwed. Thinking about it, she remembered that her grades were not even good back in the academy either. She had only carried on with practical skills. Remembering that now, she concluded that she should have switched courses. Glancing at Haewon, she thought to herself that thankfully he helped her with math tutoring, which had actually helped her a lot. Seom smiled, thinking that since he helped her, she should at least ask him out for taekbokki later. When she asked after school, Haewon rejected her offer immediately, apologizing that he couldn't make it today. She was quite surprised and said it couldn't be helped then. Her hands began to sweat as she realized she had not even considered rejection. Haewon told her he really wanted to go with her, but today he needed to go home early. He turned away and said he would text her. She waved as he left, thinking he looked so down, and she felt a little disappointed because she had really found a good spot. Hearing her own thoughts, she panicked. She couldn't believe she had just thought of Haewon's rejection as a disappointment. She mumbled to herself as she headed home that she was so scared of him the other day, but she was suddenly interrupted by Cheon, who was hiding in a corner. "It seems you got used to him," he said, following her, but she acted like he wasn't even there. Cheon suggested they hang out together instead, but she didn't reply. She only mumbled that she would be going to the arcade with Minji and Dajeong. Cheon couldn't believe she just ignored him. He even wondered if he was a ghost or something. "Partner, just wait. You're going to end up hanging out with me," he shouted from behind, and she thought to herself in his dreams. Just like Cheon said, he ended up hanging out with them because he came along with Minji and Dajeong. He called her partner as usual and pointed at the game, asking her to have a quick match with him. She refused, asking why she would play with him in the first place. He childishly asked if she was scared of losing. Of course, Yoon Seom was very competitive, so she agreed immediately. I feel sorry for him. She would definitely beat him. She stepped up to the game and said that if she won, he had to stop calling her partner. Cheon chuckled and said that if he won, then she would call him partner too. In his dream. I doubt she would ever call him that. Before they started, he picked up a ball, mocking her and saying he would go easy on her. To his surprise, Seom's first throw was a blast. "You're losing," she said, asking if he played basketball with his legs. Cheon was embarrassed and instantly grew anxious. He thought he could do better than her, but no matter how much he tried, her throws were always different and accurate. The game ended with Yoon Seom scoring 151 goals, while Cheon scored 119. Cheon couldn't believe it. He curiously asked if she was in a basketball club, because how could anyone pull that off without being in one? He wasn't ready to accept defeat, so he suggested another game. They started again, and just like that, Seom shut down every challenge like a pro. While he watched in shock, she knew deep down that shooting here was easier than archery. They decided to play another game, the motorcycle one, and she was much faster than him. He thought to himself that this was easier than horse riding. Then they played a video game, and to Cheon's surprise, he lost again. He literally felt like crying. She told him that was more than enough, and that now he should quit calling her partner. Cheon grabbed her hand, saying not yet. She glanced at him, and he let go, saying he didn't want to pull this out because the final battle was yet to be completed. He pointed at the pump dancing game ahead, saying it would conclude the battle. Back when she was reincarnated into the romance fantasy novel, she could easily hunt monsters all by herself, but there was one thing she couldn't do, and that was social dancing. Everyone would stare at her in embarrassment when she danced because she looked foolish. Not only did she look foolish, she also tripped and fell while dancing all by herself. She had completely forgotten about this weakness, the fact that she had 2 left legs. Just like in the past, she was horrible at the pump game. She tripped and fell, leaving Cheon shocked. He called out to her, saying that there was something she was actually bad at too. It was so bad that he couldn't believe it. He suggested they hold hands, but she refused, telling him to go on and try it. A few moments later, people gathered in amazement, watching him dance so well. He did different styles that made people cheer, and with his perfect physique, no one wanted to walk away. Seom watched him, mumbling to herself that he was good at something after all. For him to suggest this as his last game, it's quite obvious he was sure he could do better. Cheon looked back, sweating, which made him look extremely hot. He glanced at her and winked with a smile, which made all the ladies blush except Seom. She mumbled to herself that he was always showing off. There is literally nothing Cheon could do to make her see him as attractive or like him. He finished dancing and walked up to her, asking how the dance was. "Did I do well?" he asked, lifting his shirt to wipe his sweat. He pleaded cutely for her to at least say he did well because he was really desperate to win at least one thing. Cheon was happy when she finally said he did well. Just then, some girls approached them and began praising him for being so good at pump. They asked which school he attended and even asked for his number. Seom stood there speechless because she expected this. The girls asked him to play hockey with them over there, and Seom wondered how long he was going to keep giving them attention and flirting. The girls whispered to themselves, asking who the girl next to him was, or if she was his girlfriend. The other scoffed, saying there was no way she was his girlfriend because she looked too ordinary. Seom could literally hear their whispering and thought to herself that if she was going to play any game with them, it would be the punch game, because they really deserved to be punched. Cheon looked at her sadly, but she was already looking the other way, about to leave. Cheon scratched his head, humming, then rejected the girl's offer. He held Seom by the shoulders and clearly told the girls that he was with someone else. He waved at them to leave, saying maybe some other time, and they walked away in embarrassment, concluding that they were a couple after all. Cheon turned to Yoon Seom, smiling, and asked if she wanted to play 2-player mode with him because he would teach her. She was surprised to hear him call her by her name instead of partner. She didn't even know he knew her name. She smacked his hands, saying she would appreciate it, but he better back off. He looked sad, like a baby about to cry. Why is she so hard on him, you must be wondering. Well, after going through misery in that novel, her strictness is understood, right? He began teaching her the pump game and set it on beginner, telling her to take it slowly one step at a time. She tried it, thinking firmly that she wanted to be good at something different in this life. Cheon was surprised by how focused she was. He smiled, mumbling to himself that she was kind of cute. The music started and she began. Cheon told her not to step too fast, but only tap with the tip of her foot. She followed every step and instruction and was amazed at how well she was doing. She smiled, thinking it was actually pretty fun. Her expression changed when she heard the sound of her foot stepping on his. Cheon groaned, holding his foot, and she panicked, apologizing and asking if he was okay. She squatted and leaned closer, worried, asking if it hurt a lot. She was confused when she heard him laughing. Cheon burst out laughing, asking how she even crossed into his panel. She exhaled in relief, saying he scared her, and he couldn't stop laughing at how funny it was. She asked if his foot was really okay, and he replied that if she was that worried, she should blow on it for him. She frowned and wondered where it all went wrong, because she was literally following her lane. Cheon got lost in her confused face and smiled. He stood up and told her he lost to her and would even accept it if she told him to call her brother. Watching him praise her and say she was cool, he reached out his hand to her, saying they should go hang out with Minji and Dajeong. She stood up on her own, telling him to do whatever he wanted. He asked why she was not holding his hand, and she told him she wouldn't. They're literally like cat and rat. I doubt she would easily accept Cheon as her friend. While hanging out with Minji and Dajeong, she couldn't help thinking that it was actually fun, and it had been so long since she had just hung out normally. Watching them, she thought about how her past life was full of bleak and painful stories. They all went for karaoke and Cheon offered to perform first for them like a celebrity. They were so excited to hear him because they literally considered him an idol, but the strange thing was that he picked a kid's song. They were all shocked when he began singing. It was a complete blast, and they felt like their ears were going to bleed. Seom wondered if he was deaf or something, that he couldn't hear how horrible his voice was. At this point, I must really say that Cheon is good for nothing. His face and physique are really saving him from a lot. When he finished, he handed the mic to Seom, but she panicked and refused, saying she couldn't do it. He told her that singing was all about confidence. Bro, seriously? Holding the mic, Seom was so nervous she felt pissed at herself. Cheon told her not to worry and said he would back her up. She finally began singing her uncle's favorite song, and Cheon cheered her, saying she had a nice voice after all. She thought to herself that he was not a bad kid after all. Minji and Dajeong praised her, saying she was better than a celebrity. That celebrity they're talking about must be Cheon. She's really better than him. The joy she felt after a long time was so overwhelming that she didn't even notice her phone ringing where she left it at the corner. Haewon was calling her. He was in his room, dialing her number, but it kept saying not reachable. He clenched the phone in his hand while sitting on the floor, his shirt drenched in blood. What happened? What has he done now, and why is he calling her? This guy is really after her life. Earlier, at Haewon's house, his father was playing golf and annoyingly scolded him for choosing to go to that school and for his ranks getting worse with time. So this is why he went home sad? His grades are bad? Haewon, his father called out when he noticed he wasn't listening. His father got angry, clenched the golf iron, and approached him. Haewon glared at him. His father raised the club and hit him in the face, yelling that he had told him many times not to look at him with those eyes. Haewon apologized coldly, then suddenly smiled, saying that was what he learned from watching him. His father smiled back before attacking him again, calling him an unlucky brat. "Do you even know how disgusting your eyes are?" he yelled. Haewon asked what he expected him to do since he didn't like them, pluck them out? His expression was so disrespectful that it kept triggering his father, and his father asked if they should give that a try. He took a heavy beating before heading back to his room. Staring at himself in the bathroom mirror, he thought that it didn't show much, which was quite disappointing. This guy is really a psychopath. Why do I feel like he triggered his dad on purpose? Looking at the mirror, he stood quietly and suddenly thought to himself that he got lucky in this life. It was easier to go far than any other time. He pulled off his shirt, and his whole body was filled with bruises. He took a shower, thinking that this was nothing, and that what had always been so difficult for him was her, and only her. This is so messed up. His obsession is just the same as in the novel. I can't believe he actually jumped out of the novel. It's crazy, right? Yoon was right. If she could enter a novel, that means fantasy novel characters can also enter the real world. After bathing, he dried his hair and picked up his phone. With a cold expression, he texted a number, telling them to get that thing he asked for ready. The next day at school, Yoon sat all by herself, thinking about how strange it was that Haewon had not come. It wasn't like he was ever late before. She also wondered why he called last night. Just then, Minji touched her bag and exclaimed. She raised it, asking if the toy was the one they got yesterday. Yesterday at the arcade, they saw a toy machine, and Yoon Seom couldn't help thinking that the tiger looked so much like Haewon. She tried to grab it to give it to him when she saw him, but ended up getting a squirrel instead. Looking at it, her mood dropped, and she knew she couldn't give it to him as a gift. Cheon showed up at that moment and asked what she grabbed. He made fun of her when he saw it, saying she literally grabbed an alien. She glared at him, mumbling that it was technically a squirrel. She looked at it again, thinking it looked so stupid. What a shame. I should have done better, she lamented. Cheon looked at her for a moment, then snatched it from her and instantly gave her his own. She scoffed, saying he had weird taste, and he chuckled, saying it was totally his type and that it reminded him of someone. Don't tell me the someone he's talking about is our dear Yoon Seom? Cheon cutely told her that she had to hang the one he gave her on her bag and think of him every time she saw it. She frowned, thinking that apart from him being too slim, he was actually a good guy. Did she just praise him? That's rare, my girl. Cheon suddenly showed up again and asked if she liked it. She freaked out, telling him to make some noise when he appeared instead of showing up out of nowhere every time. Cheon smiled and showed her his bag, which had her squirrel hanger on it. Why are you carrying that stupid thing around? She asked weirdly. He smiled and replied that it was because she gave it to him. No, she didn't. You snatched it yourself. Cheon told them how fun yesterday was and suggested they hang out like that often. He also invited them to play some board games, and the girls agreed immediately. But Seom suddenly suggested that they ask Haewon to come this time. Later during sports, Seom sat alone, thinking that Haewon really did not come to school today, and the teacher said he caught a cold. She sighed, wondering why it was even bothering her so much. She regretted not seeing and answering his call yesterday, and now she couldn't reach him. Just then, her phone beeped. When she checked, it was a reply from Haewon, saying he was better now. She apologized for not answering his call yesterday and explained that she was busy with her friends at the arcade. He asked if she was with Minji and Dajeong, and she replied yes, adding that Cheon Sion was there too. She thought to herself that she was glad he was better. 3 minutes later, he still hadn't replied after she mentioned Cheon. Someone got jealous. 5 minutes later, Seom was still waiting for a reply, but there was none. She couldn't believe he just left her on read. She wondered if something happened. She put her phone away, concluding that he must have fallen asleep or gone to do something, and tried not to overthink it. While going home, there was still no reply. She wondered if she should ask her uncle to make kimchi stew for her. When she reached her door, she saw someone dressed in black sitting right in front. She wondered who it was, and her eyes widened in shock when she noticed it was Haewon. She asked what he was doing there. "Don't tell me you've been waiting?" "Since when exactly?" she asked, and he slowly raised his head. She rushed over, saying he should have called. She squatted beside him, reached out her hand, and asked why he would just come and wait like this. What if she came home late? She froze when she noticed the bruises on his body. She asked what was wrong with his face. Haewon called her name, and she froze. "Hang out with me too," he said, looking at her cutely. "He's so cute. Why does he have to be so toxic?" They arrived at the escape room, and Seom asked if he really wanted to try this. He chuckled behind his face mask and said yes. He told her it sounded fun, and that he had never been to an escape room before. Looking at him, Yoon Seom could tell something was wrong, but whenever she asked, he brushed it off. She decided to go along with his plan for now. Before this, when he asked her to hang out, she asked what he wanted to do. He told her he wanted something normal, just like what she did with her friends, maybe even going to the arcade with him too. She panicked, asking if he wanted to go looking like that. His face was a total mess. She suggested treating his wounds first, but he sadly told her he only wanted to hang out with her right now. Our girl froze, wondering how he could say that while looking at her like that. Back at the entrance, the receptionist smiled happily, thanking them for waiting and telling them that a room just opened up and it was the horror theme. Horror? Seom asked, already scared because the poster looked so real. Of all things to do, why hang out in a horror escape room? This would not be funny. They went in, and an announcement played, saying the building was a ward built in 1968. Seom was amazed when she saw Haewon dressed in the outfit. She thought they were surprisingly committed to the concept, and it suited him well. The announcement came again, asking her to help the patient whose limbs were bound. To escape, they had to solve the mystery of the closed ward. Seeing how Haewon was tied up, she thought it was strange. "I guess the real game starts once we get these clothes off." She slid her hand into the clothes, and her eyes widened when she realized something. With a serious face, she asked if she should just break it off. "Then what fun is it, girl?" Haewon chuckled, saying he didn't think they should do that because the staff member who tied him up said there was a hidden key somewhere in there, so she should go look for it. She agreed, but deep down, she knew she was scared to move around there alone. She tried to assure herself, thinking back to how she was not afraid of political battles, assassins, or monsters in the novel. But one thing was sure, she was still scared of ghosts. She wondered if it was because she couldn't beat ghosts. Sadly, she searched for the key. Haewon called out, asking if she was okay and not scared. She told him she was fine and kept looking for clues. She thought that since it was the first stage, it should be easy to find the key. While searching, she suddenly froze, and before she knew it, she fell backward in fear. Haewon rushed over, asking if she was okay. At that moment, her spirit almost left her body. Come to think of it, how did he get out? She trembled, saying she felt something squishy. He told her it was okay, that it was just a prop. She felt embarrassed when she realized she had panicked over nothing. Then she suddenly turned to Haewon, confused. "How did you get out?" she asked. He smiled and said he heard her scream, gave a hard yank, and the clothes snapped off. She was surprised, thinking that was strange, because when she checked earlier, it was too sturdy. She shook it off, telling herself that was not the problem now. What worried her more was how this place looked far more real and scary than she expected. Haewon called out to her softly and said he wanted to hold her hand. He smiled and said he wanted to hold it the same way she held his when he was shaking. She was shocked, and the thought of holding hands again felt even more horrifying, so she said no. "I'll pass. I'm not even scared," she said. But a few minutes later, she jumped straight into Haewon's arms, screaming that something just moved. Poor Seom, her pride got wounded. She held onto his arms tightly, almost crying, and asked if he thought something was really about to come out. He looked around and told her it was nothing. He suggested they check a card over there to see if there were clues. He said the bookshelf looked like the one from earlier, but she was more worried about the place. She kept looking around, afraid something would pop out, and sadly thought, when will this end already? Just then, a terrifying ghost appeared in front of her. She screamed with her mouth wide open like someone who had truly seen a real ghost. Haewon called out to her in worry, and before he could react, she jumped toward him, and they both fell onto the bed. She landed on top of him, and they stared into each other's eyes. When she realized what was happening, she apologized quickly and said they should just give up on the quest. Another sound came, and she hugged him again in fear, clenching his shirt. Haewon was too shocked to react. He told her that if she was too scared, he would cover her. He rubbed her head, saying he could also cover her eyes if she wanted. He held her tight against his chest and said he was scared too. Yoon Seom felt how fast his heart was beating and couldn't believe he had been holding and how scared he was. I doubt his heart is beating because he's scared. I think it's because she's so close to him, don't you think? She told him he must have been terrified all this while, then asked how long they were going to sit on each other like this. He held her tighter and said, "Until I calm down." Did he just say that? Calm down my foot. Bro, you don't look terrified. I wish we could see the staff watching this on camera. Finally, they got out of the escape room and even took pictures. Haewon kept staring at the photo as they headed home. Seom asked if his first escape room was fun. He chuckled, saying it was fascinating, and thanked her for hanging out with him. She said it was fine because she had fun too, after a while. Fun? I doubt it. That was far from fun. She looked away, smiling, thinking that Haewon seemed completely unbothered. Maybe she was the only one feeling strange. She remembered how close they were in there and thought that it was the first time she had been that close to a guy in this life. Looking at Haewon staring at the picture, she wondered what was going on in his head, because sometimes she didn't understand him. He would close the distance, then act unbothered again. She suddenly stopped and called out to him. He looked up, and she told him to wait there for a moment. He asked where she was going, but before he knew it, she was gone. He stood there confused, and when she came back, the sun was already down. She returned with a first aid kit. She treated his wounds, and he groaned. She asked if it hurt, and he said a little. When she tried to clean it again, he grabbed her hand and looked up at her, asking her to be gentle. Look at him. Isn't he so cute? Stop doing this to our girl. She was flustered, thinking he was crossing the line again and hiding what really mattered. She dropped the cotton pad and told him to roll up his shirt. He was confused, but she did it anyway. She froze when she saw all the bruises on his body. From the way they looked, she knew this was not from delinquents. There was no way someone who didn't even come to school would get beaten like that. She stepped back to the corner. He asked how she knew, and she asked how she wouldn't. She sprayed disinfectant on the bruises and asked why he didn't tell her earlier. If she had known, she would have been more careful and wouldn't have jumped on him like that, because it must have hurt. He smiled and said he didn't see the need to tell her, because it would only make her worry, and she couldn't solve it right away. Seom was surprised. She told him sadly that he always puts up walls. At first, she thought he was kind to everyone and had many friends, but now it was clear that he was hard to get close to. Don't hide so much. Don't try to solve everything alone either, she said, adding that she might be overthinking, but it was because she was worried. Haewon was shocked when she told him he could rely on her a little. Watching her smile, he looked down and couldn't stop himself from smiling too, telling her that she was different. She sat closer and told him that sometimes he felt like a door she had to open. No, not even a door, but a huge gate. She asked why he kept getting beaten up and firmly said that he was lacking technique, which was something she could teach him. She even showed him how to handle anyone who came at him and told him that when the opponent was too strong, he should run away no matter what. Haewon, standing in a corner, mumbled to himself about how cute her little demonstration was. She asked why he was laughing, and he quickly composed himself, asking her to keep teaching him. She told him to stop making that face. He asked what face she was talking about. That one right there, she said, the face that makes me want to give you everything. He froze and asked, you want to give me everything? Yoon Seom got home, took her bath, and sat eating apples when a text from Haewon came in, asking if she got home safely. He asked what she was doing and said he was searching for escape room themes. He told her they should go again next time, but not horror. She smiled, thinking he was really serious, and agreed that today was actually fun. She kept laughing while chatting with him and mumbled that she really needed to take him to the arcade someday. Turning to her bag, she said she would definitely win a doll that looked like Haewon next time. Then her eyes widened. The doll Cheon gave her, which was hanging on her bag, was gone. She wondered if she dropped it somewhere and thought it was strange. Back at Haewon's mansion, in his room, he was holding the doll. Suddenly, he threw it to the floor and stepped on it. His face turned bitter and cold. This is strange. Does he know it was given to her by Cheon? This male lead is too creepy. Haewon, who are you really? I feel like he knows way too much. Earlier, while staring at the doll, he had thought he wanted her to pity him. He just wanted her to look at him one more time, and he never meant to get this far. He also realized this world was different from back then. You've become stronger, Yoon Seom, he said with a smile before crushing the doll under his foot. He told himself he was trying to suppress it, but the more he did, the more it overflowed, bringing back that same strange feeling. A playful thrill lingered because he knew the rush of possessing, and he had to hold it back. He decided that this time, he would surely control it. Back then, in the novel, Killian and Ines used to train in the yard, fighting with swords. Ines was always fierce and often kicked his sword away, placing her blade on his neck. "I lost again this time," he said from the ground. She scoffed, saying he went easy on her. He told her he didn't. Her eyes widened when she noticed a bruise on his body. She leaned closer, asking why it was like that and when he got hurt. He looked away, saying it was nothing. She grabbed his collar and shouted that it was clearly a big deal because it was so deep. She told him to take off his shirt, and his face turned red as he asked why. She yelled again, and he yelled back for her to get away. She refused, trying to force him, but he grabbed her hand, flipped her to the ground with one move, and pinned her there, telling her to stop. They stared at each other. He groaned that he had told her to stop, but she was too stubborn. "Look at this," she said softly. "You can overpower me with one hand now. You've been stronger than me for a long time." He froze, realizing what he had done. She sighed, thinking she had always protected him because he was weak. Her whole childhood was filled with him. At first, she cared for him, but as time passed, she found herself leaning on him instead. Killian was her only friend, family, and guardian. She always thought she knew him, yet sometimes she felt she didn't. Seom insisted again, asking how he got those bruises and if someone was bullying him. He said it was just from training. She reminded him that he was the strongest in the empire and no one could bully him. Upset, she told him to explain before she checked herself. He covered her mouth quickly, telling her to stop saying things like that. He said her words were too strong. She asked what he meant, but he couldn't answer. He turned away, saying he would go inside because she was driving him crazy. She stood there, confused, thinking he was really strange. Seom suddenly woke up and realized it was a dream. She sat up, wondering why she dreamed of that. She remembered that was when Killian started to change. Maybe she should have acted sooner back then. She sighed, telling herself to forget the past and focus on what mattered now. The current Haewon was just her classmate. That was what she believed, until one day, Haewon pushed her onto the bed, climbed over her, and kissed her. She was so shocked she couldn't understand how they ended up like this. Oh my gosh. Did they really kiss? How did this happen? I can't wait. This is so hot. I knew this would happen. Haewon has been holding back for so long. Midterms finally ended. The class rep suggested planning an event for the sports festival. He said they needed girls for basketball and asked who was interested. Cheon laughed and nominated Yoon Seom, saying she was basically a pro and had crushed him once. Everyone was surprised and asked if she played too. Seom stayed quiet, thinking she had to join something anyway. Minji cheered that she should play dodgeball because her throws were amazing. Dajeong said she should run the 100 meters because she could do it in 12 seconds. Haewon suggested a long jump because he saw her clear a 2-meter wall in one leap. At this point, Yoon Seom might end up doing everything with all these recommendations. Just like I said, Yoon Seom was nominated for all the sports, and she couldn't believe it. It felt like a huge weight on her shoulders, and she wondered if this was even allowed. Why was she the only one on the list? She went to the restroom, and while washing her hands, she thought to herself how exhausting this all was. She couldn't believe how serious the sports festival had become. But then she smiled, thinking it was actually exciting. What are you snickering about all by yourself? Kim Gabin sneaked up on her asking. Her girls crowded around Yoon Seom, saying they needed to discuss something. Yoon couldn't believe she had literally brought a whole crowd with her. Kim Gabin smiled cheerfully, saying how this spot was actually a nostalgic place for them. Do you remember? Last year, this was the spot I used to deal with you. Pretty fun, right? Yoon stared at her quietly. Then Kim Gabin asked one question with a serious expression. What's your relationship with Haewon? Seom replied, saying they were just classmates. Kim asked if she thought Haewon was on her level and added, do you think a loser like you has a chance with him? Seom was confused. Since when did Kim Gabin rate Haewon so highly? Wasn't she among those bullying him? Before she knew it, Kim Gabin slapped her. Seom's eyes widened in shock as she held her cheek. At that moment, Seom got really pissed. Meanwhile, Kim Gabin smiled to herself, thinking Yoon Seom must be scared. She's still that same pushover. They didn't know what Seom was thinking during that silence. She was planning the exact punishment she could give them, maybe string them up and beat them like she used to do to bullies in her past. But she shook the idea off. Paying them back would be easy, but she didn't want to stoop to their level. She was a civilized modern person and should handle things differently. Seom stepped forward to Gabin, whose expression changed. What level do you think you are? She asked. Kim was confused. Seom told her she was jealous of how popular Gabin was at school, acting like she was on top of the world, ruling over everyone. If we're talking about tiers, maybe you're tier 1 and I'm tier 8. Seom added. The other girls murmured among themselves, wondering if Seom had always been this intense. Seom smiled and said to Gabin, enjoy bullying people you think are weaker here, because when you graduate and move into high society, you'll be nothing but trash. What did you say? Kim Gabin gritted her teeth. Seom reminded her she had a YouTube channel with a few subscribers, and if it leaked that she bullied kids in school, she'd fall badly. Watch your steps, Seom said, tapping her shoulder and leaving with a cold expression. Kim Gaebin stood there, angry, clenching her fists, furious at how messed up Seom was. Yoon Seom was all dressed in her sportswear and showed the girls how to throw a ball, telling them to use all their strength. The slap mark was still red, and she thought confidently that she had to win because her first opponent was Kim Gaebin's class. While thinking about crushing them, she heard Cheon calling her from a distance. "What are you doing here and not practicing?" she asked. "Didn't you know I'm doing the three-legged race?" he replied. She asked who he was paired with, and he said her. She was surprised, saying she wasn't paired with him. He told her he switched with Minju because he wanted to do it with her. He touched her face, worried, asking what happened. "Your cheek is swollen," he yelled. She told him she was fine, thinking to herself how he noticed when it was barely visible. He asked who did it and suggested they put ointment on it immediately. Just then, someone called Yoon Seom, saying the teacher instructed her to bring the balls for tomorrow from the storage. She slipped away from Cheon's grasp, smiling at him and thanking him for his concern. He watched her leave, speechless. When Yoon Seom got to the storage room, she was surprised to see Haewon inside. "Why are you here?" she asked. He said the teacher told him to bring balls. She was confused, saying she was told the same. Then the door shut behind them and they both froze, glancing at the door in confusion. It was locked from the outside. This is so messed up. Did they just get locked in the storage room together? Who could have done it? This means the kissing scene is coming soon. I love this. I've been rooting for Cheon, but I like Haewon too. Yoon Seom kept banging on the door, asking who was out there, but there was no response. Everywhere fell silent, and she was already tired from shouting and hitting the door. "We're in big trouble," she said, adding that she doesn't think anyone would come to their rescue since classes are over. And the crazy part is that they both left their phones behind. Haewon asked who on earth she thinks might have locked the door. Seom went silent, and suddenly the thought of Kim Gaebin being behind this came to her mind. She got so furious, and Haewon concluded that she now knows. She sighed, apologizing for dragging him into this for no reason. Suddenly, the idea of ripping off the window came to her mind, but then she realized the window is too tiny for anyone to pass through. Then she thought of breaking down the door, but she shook off the idea completely because just recently, she decided to be a civilized person. Oh, now our girl wants to do better. Still prefer the violent Yoon Seom. She glanced at the mattress beside her, and Haewon glanced at it too. She gently sat on it and smiled at him, saying it was a relief because at least there was a mat here and they wouldn't have to crouch all night, right? She asked him to sit, and he didn't say a word as he gently sat right beside her. He stretched his hands backwards comfortably, letting out a soft grin as he asked if she wasn't feeling scared. She crunched herself up, saying she feels a little scared. Just the thought of having to skip dinner was scary. Her uncle would be so worried, don't you think? And aside from that, they would literally starve this night till morning. Yoon Seom suddenly smiled as she put her hands inside her pockets. Before he knew it, she brought out a bunch of candies and chuckled as she explained that she had them because she uses them to increase her blood sugar during practice. Seeing this, Haewon imagined her being a squirrel, because why would anyone walk around with this much candy? Before he knew it, she opened one, saying it would have been better if there was water too. Haewon watched her quietly as she consumed the candy so cutely. He couldn't stop himself from smiling softly at how cute she looked. Seom turned and asked if he wanted some, and he offered to eat from the one down because he likes mint choco better. Our girl was surprised that it was the flavor he liked because she doesn't like that flavor. The two continued talking over sweets, and Seom began laughing as she realized there are so many things Haewon couldn't eat. She told him, funnily, that he had the taste bud of an elementary school student. "It's not like I can't eat them, but I just don't want to," he defended, and she then asked what his favorite food was. Haewon paused immediately, and it came to his realization that he had never thought about what he actually liked. Seom was shocked to hear that he doesn't even have a favorite food when there are so many foods on Earth. At this point, we all agree that Seom is a foodie. She found it extremely frustrating that he doesn't have a favorite food and wondered if he intended to live his entire life eating just meat and potatoes. "Just what kind of life did you live to not even have a favorite food?" she asked. She sighed, and suddenly she was washed with sadness for him. Haewon told her it's been like this since his childhood. He only did whatever he was told to do and what not to do, so he didn't have his own choices but to live quietly. At this point, Seom began wondering if he actually came from a strict family, because that's the only way such a life is possible. Then she remembered the injuries he had from home too. Haewon looked at how sad she had become, and then thought to himself that he has always had his eyes on one thing, and it has been overwhelming to have wanted just that one thing, so he can't even think of anything else. I can't believe this guy's goal since childhood has been all about her. This obsession is really scary. Just hope he doesn't take her life again. Seom suddenly called out to Haewon and smiled, suggesting they go get tteokbokki once they're out of here. "It's obvious you don't have a favorite food because all you've done is study," she said, smiling happily that she'll take it upon herself to make sure she takes him to a very good restaurant. Hearing her say that, he was surprised and wondered what he'll do at this point. Yoon Seom also told him they'll do more fun things aside from eating. Since it was his first time ever going to an escape room too, they'll do other fun things. Haewon looked the other way and was blushing so hard because he liked everything she just said. Seom felt relieved on hearing him actually agree to her ideas. Seom continued talking and pointed out that he actually looks like someone she knows. That's why she was so wary of him the first time they met. Girl, you don't have to explain anything. This young man here already knows. Seom even laid down on the foam, feeling relieved as she said she's glad he's Haewon and not any other person. Haewon was shocked. She chuckled at how he's so childish for having such taste buds and promised to tease him forever. Haewon was lost in his thoughts, wondering if he could just be the Haewon she really believes he is. Eventually, the two fell asleep, and Seom opened her eyes later on, noticing a cover on her. She sat up with her sleepy eyes, asking when he covered her up, but immediately she was about to say thank you for the jacket when she froze on seeing him sweating profusely in pain. She shouted and called out to him worriedly. Okay, now what's wrong with Mr. Pretender? Is this another little trick of his to get her attention? Haewon, she shouted out. She leaned closer to him, and he mumbled that he's fine and only gets this sweaty when he's in the dark. Don't worry too much. I'll be fine if I rest a bit, he said, and groaned afterwards, holding his chest. Seom yelled, asking what he meant by he's fine when she can practically see how soaked his shirt has become. She told him to wait over there, and she ran over to the bookshelf and began looking for something. Thinking to herself, she has seen something like this in books, and it's called hyperventilating. She remembered that in novels, knights who went to war would suffer difficulty in breathing due to trauma, and even young ladies at debutante balls have hyperventilation due to stress attacks. In all this, blocking the mouth with a bag usually helps. Seom searched worriedly, if only she had a plastic bag at least, but she didn't, and it was so frustrating. She looked back at Haewon suffering and concluded she really needed to get out of here and get help. She got worried again about leaving him alone here since it's dark. Just then, she recalled that there was another way. Seom went back to where Haewon was lying. She leaned closer to him and suddenly freaked out, wondering if this was actually the best thing to do. Wait a minute, is this where the kiss finally happens? Is she planning on kissing him to stop the hyperventilation? She couldn't help thinking to herself that this was a cliché that only appears in webtoons. She tried to think carefully of another solution, but just then Haewon opened his eyes and called out to her. She panicked and asked how he was feeling. She moved away immediately from him on realizing that the way she was positioned over him was too weird. This was just first aid. Seom shouted so he wouldn't misunderstand. Haewon didn't care because he was in pain, and before she knew it, he pulled her closer to himself and asked her to do something for him. Before she could finish asking him to wait, he kissed her on the lips. Oh my. Finally, the kiss happened. This is much better. She was planning to kiss him but was afraid to, now he kissed her instead. Haewon's trembling and cracking voice was something she was hearing for the first time, and when he kissed her, she couldn't push him away. Instead, they continued kissing, and she kept asking herself if this was right. Instead of breathing air into his mouth, her body was getting pushed down onto the bed. The two continued kissing passionately, and Haewon mistakenly bit her on the lips. They broke out of the kiss, and looking at the red mark on her lips, he swore at himself for doing it too hard. He wondered what to do because he couldn't seem to control himself. Before he knew it, he passed out on the bed. Oh my. Whoever wrote this webtoon really deserves an award. Seom was surprised and shocked. She couldn't believe he just passed out. On the other hand, Cheon Sion was hanging out with the girls, but he was so absent-minded, lying alone on the couch. He was thinking of Yoon Seom's cheeks from earlier, and he couldn't help mumbling to himself about how much it bothered him. He stood up immediately on realizing how boring the place was. He told his friends he was going home, so they should continue playing by themselves today. As he turned to leave, one of the girls grabbed his wrist and asked what was wrong with him lately. You don't really hang out with us anymore, and it's even harder to see you in school. I was so happy that you were transferred to our school, I guess you don't know, she said. Cheon mumbled to himself that he's been busy hanging out with Seom and her people lately. Cheon sighed when she said he should play with her more. He told her how he played with her on his first day and ended up getting caught by his classmate. The girl instantly got pissed at him, calling that a play. She let go of his hand immediately, saying she didn't expect much from him anyway. Cheon's eyes widened in shock, and he sighed, saying that's nice of her and that this is normal. He leaned close to her as she sat on the couch and mumbled that's exactly the reaction he expected. Before he knew it, he began thinking of Yoon Seom again and how smart she is. He then asked the girl if he should poke her and make her fall for him. She asked what he was talking about, but Cheon concluded that Yoon Seom would be disappointed in him. The girl told him it was all useless and that she wouldn't fall for him anymore, but to her shock, Cheon turned away and was leaving. This is so hilarious. She expected him to stay and beg her to have him. I like it when guys break such girls' egos. She yelled at him, calling him a bad jerk and asking if he even remembers her name. Cheon looked back, saying he remembers, and looked ahead sadly, mumbling out Yoon Seom's name. Oh my poor boy. He's totally finished. All our boys want Yoon Seom. She's so lucky. Finally, it was sports day. Everyone was excited, especially Kang Minjun. She was the most serious about sports day. She showed up in front of the class, asking who wanted a face painting. Her class is very competitive. It's either they win or die. Although Minji likes sports day, she is very clueless about games, so she doesn't participate. Instead, she has a field she's very good at, and that's decorating her classmates' faces with painting. Cheon, after having his face painted, was looking even more beautiful, and he liked it so much. Having two handsome guys in their class this year, Minji found it fun being able to paint their faces. Cheon Sion was the first handsome guy she painted, and he was so cooperative about everything. Not only that, he was so kind with his words. But watching him leave and wave so happily, she recalled that there were rumors about him faking his kindness, which made her wonder if it's easy to fake it. Minji honestly felt that within his kindness, he was definitely a sincere person. Minji was glad she was done with the first one. She turned in the other direction, and there he was, Haewon, the second most handsome guy in class, and surprisingly hard to handle. Though he is upright and has good manners, he has his walls up high. Regardless, Minji approached him all smiley with her brushes, asking if he wanted a beautiful painting. He smiled as he refused her. She suggested helping with his hair then, but he still refused. She was so surprised at how sweetly he was rejecting her. At this point, Minji knew that there was only one way to solve this problem because she had 10 years of experience in reading comic romance. Minji ran off and grabbed Yoon Seom where she was standing and dragged her all the way to where Haewon was, handing over all the painting brushes to her, leaving our girl completely stunned. Yoon Seom and Haewon facing each other created this tension. Minji broke the silence by asking Seom to help paint his face. She turned to Haewon, saying Yoon Seom would do it for him, and without hesitation, Haewon agreed. As expected, her plan worked, an icy male lead who always melts for his sunny female lead. Little did Minji know that something was going on. Seom stood up immediately, apologizing to Minji and saying she had practice to do and would leave Haewon's face painting to her. Before they knew it, she ran off. Minji knew it was an excuse because there was no one on the playground. Haewon stood there confused. What's going on between the two? I thought. Yoon Seom, sitting on a bench, couldn't believe she actually ran away. She thought to herself that she couldn't look at Haewon's face. She had a flashback to when they spent the night in the storage room. Immediately it was morning, Haewon woke her up as soon as help came. The guard flashed lights on them, asking what they were doing in there. She explained that they were locked in there yesterday and couldn't get out. The security guard let them out immediately, and it ended without trouble, though her uncle went crazy looking for her. Of course he would, his dearest nephew. The problem now is that after that incident that night, Haewon has tried to engage in a conversation as usual with Yoon Seom, but the poor girl has been avoiding him with petty excuses. She must be so ashamed of that kiss. Yoon Seom was always far away from Haewon. She could give any excuse just not to get close to him, and I'm so sure that Haewon has realized that. Seom thought to herself that she wasn't doing it on purpose, but she just happens to avoid him whenever she sees his face. She thought of the kissing scene again and concluded it was a rescue attempt, but the problem is that she got swept away in it without realizing. Girl, I doubt Haewon kissed you in an attempt to rescue himself. I mean, look at him. In the book, they actually did more than this, and that's because they were adults. Also, Killian was so rough and unskilled in whatever they did in the book, but right now, it's obvious that Haewon is totally a different person because he is so skilled in kissing and showing affection. Yoon Seom was shocked by her own thoughts, but then she wasn't wrong. Haewon is too good for a high schooler. Yoon, without realizing that Cheon was behind her, spoke out aloud, saying Haewon is definitely in his second life, because someone that doesn't have experience in dating wouldn't have been able to pull that off. Who are you talking about? Cheon asked as he sat beside her, and she unconsciously said, Haewon, of course. Yoon screamed on realizing what just happened and yelled at him for always popping out of nowhere. Cheon took out a candy stick and asked if she wanted some because it's really tasty. Of course our girl would like some, it's candy, right? Yoon, without hesitation, collected it from him cutely and shoved it into her mouth, saying thank you. Cheon watched her happily as she licked every bit of it. She suddenly paused on hearing him say she's acting weird. You've been groaning like a puppy that needs to pee since morning. Not only that, you disappear and get startled whenever I talk to you. Cheon said, and Yoon Seom felt stabbed by his statement. He asked her to be honest with him, and our girl realized that there was no more hiding this because Cheon is smart and caught on quickly. Her eyes widened on remembering that Cheon is an expert in this field of kissing affairs, and maybe she should be honest and get help on how to navigate this situation. Please, girl. Don't tell him. I'll be heartbroken on his behalf. You seriously can't tell anyone else about this, okay? She asked, and he chuckled, saying of course he wouldn't and she should trust him. Cheon wondered what she wanted to tell him that had been making her groan so cutely. He concluded maybe she was caught by the dean for something, but Cheon paused immediately when Yoon Seom told him that she kissed Haewon. She spilled the beans. Poor Cheon is stunned. Our poor baby. Cheon was still shocked when she added that she has been avoiding him ever since the kiss and is feeling bad about it. She asked him to help her since he has been doing it and must be used to it. Did she just tell him that? This is really hilarious. Cheon is totally not getting a chance with her, and he should know it now. Cheon held on tight to his candy stick till it was about breaking. He remembered how he played around with girls' hearts and thought to himself that Haewon had surely beaten him on this one. Cheon smiled because Yoon Seom was still waiting for a reply. He told her there was a way, and that's her getting used to it by doing it a lot. Seom freaked out, asking if he's telling her to do it more often with Haewon, and he quickly told her she could do it with anyone else. Did he just say that to our girl? She asked if he was crazy, because where would she even find someone to do it with? Cheon moved closer to her, saying that wouldn't be a problem because he's right here. Bro is shooting his shot. He whispered in her ear, asking if she cares to try it with him because he's literally a pro at it. Seom looked at his gorgeous face after he said that, and she couldn't help thinking to herself that he's top-tier handsome. Just when he thought she was going to give in, she called out his name, and, before he knew it, she began hitting him and calling him a little brat. Seom asked in a serious tone, just like a teacher would, asking who the hell told him he could flirt with her. The poor boy was confused and stammered as he tried talking. He sadly apologized, and she warned him to stop messing with girls' hearts or he'll get it one day. Yoon Seom sighed as she glanced sideways, saying she knows he doesn't even like those kinds of things. Cheon was surprised and asked how she knew. She innocently told him she can tell by the way he behaves around girls. He doesn't chase them away when they swarm him, and he doesn't have a good time either when doing whatever he does with them. It's written all over his face. She smiled, saying she's sure everything is just like a joke to him. Cheon went silent immediately. He wondered what to do about it all now. He covered his face with his hands because he couldn't hide the blush on his cheeks. Lover boy, or should I say playboy, is scared because everything is turning dangerous. Back at the sports festival, as expected, Yoon Seom took her class to victory after showing those amazing skills in playing ball. Everyone cheered her on because she was literally the class MVP. Her friends sat at a corner, amazed by the fact that she led their class to victory not only in basketball, but also in dodgeball and baseball, making everyone obsessed with her. Yoon Seom, after being shaken and thrown up countless times by the crowd, came back to her friends looking so exhausted and asking to be saved. Minji suggested they go watch the boys' semifinals, which were about to start, and Seom found it very fun to attend. She asked who was playing, and on getting there, behold, Haewon was showing off among the players. This guy's build is everything. Whoever designed this character really deserves a raise. While other girls were cheering, Yoon Seom was too shy to even look up at him. Just then, Cheon shouted her name from the field, asking excitedly if she was there to cheer for him. This guy is being overly delusional. Yoon Seom, watching how the girls were praising him, mumbled to herself, asking what he was feeling exactly, an idol. What's Cheon doing here? Didn't he say he disliked playing because it makes him sweaty? Yoon Seom asked, and Minji, confused, said she wasn't sure, but she heard he suddenly decided to give his all in it. The match began, and Haewon took up playing the ball as passing began. OMG, the boys are looking so hot while playing. Minji and her friend blushed as they praised the boys. How could these two handsome boys be in one class? The match went on, and the ball bounced back into Haewon and Cheon's direction. The two caught the ball, and the girls from the crowd continued cheering. Yoon Seom was cheering happily too, only to be shocked by the sudden occurrence. They all wondered what the hell was suddenly going on between the two boys. I can't believe these two boys are fighting during a match over who gets to play and score. Bro, you both are on the same team for crying out loud. Yoon Seom's face turned really serious. She couldn't take it and was about to jump in to beat the boys, but the girls held her back as she cursed at them. As someone who's so serious about sports, that's expected. Yoon Seom threatened to deal with them if they lost this match because of their childishness. The two boys, after watching her swear at them like that, turned to each other, and Haewon let go. Just when Cheon was about to go play, Haewon fell to the ground, leaving him surprised. Did he just fake a fall just to implicate Cheon? The other guys rushed to him and yelled at Cheon for pushing him. What a joke. Cheon said with an annoyed facial expression. Haewon sure knows how to gain attention. Haewon was substituted and ended up sitting right next to Yoon Seom. Our girl couldn't breathe properly just by the fact that he was sitting beside her. She wondered why he had to sit there of all places, and at the same time, she wondered if he was okay after that fall. She immediately answered when Haewon called her name. He told her he hadn't been feeling well lately and it seemed like he had a fever. Before she knew it, he leaned on her shoulder, asking her to check if he was burning up. Don't tell me he got himself kicked out of the field just to get her attention and care. Looking at how cute Haewon's face was up close, Seom freaked out and immediately he looked up at her. She anxiously slapped his face away, wondering if he had lost his mind. Oh no, this isn't right. She slapped our baby. Haewon could still feel her palm on his face even after she had moved away. She yelled, saying he was perfectly fine and had no fever. Haewon asked why she did that when she was supposed to touch his forehead and check. She ran off, asking him to go to the infirmary and confirm. Haewon was still surprised, and the girls noticed them. While running through the hallway, Yoon Seom wondered what she was going to do now, because just now, the feeling she had when he leaned on her shoulder was so overwhelming. His lips were looking so attractive too. She leaned on the stairs, thinking to herself why she was thinking of such things earlier. She began wondering if she had feelings of love for him. While lost in her thoughts, she didn't realize someone was behind her. Boom! Someone reached out and pushed her from behind. Her eyes widened in shock, and she fell down the stairs because she lost balance immediately she was pushed. Who could it be? It can't be anyone else but Gaben. That crazy brat needs to be dealt with already. The three-legged race was about to begin, and all participants were getting ready. Cheon was shocked and flared up when he saw Haewon. Why are you here? He shouted, and Haewon told him, while stretching, that both of them would be the ones running the race. Cheon yelled at him to stop talking nonsense because Yoon Seom is his supposed partner. Haewon told him the pairing changed, and now he's here to take it. Cheon freaked out, asking if he's crazy. How could he agree to such a creepy pairing? Haewon asked why he wouldn't and asked if he was just disappointed that he couldn't do it with Yoon Seom. Cheon got pissed and decided to show him something. He lifted his shirt and showed Haewon a finger mark on his back, telling him it was Yoon Seom's way of telling him to act like a jerk. Cheon chuckled, saying she's obviously trying to keep tabs on him, and he likes it, so he's sticking with her and no one else. Haewon's expression had already changed, and he looked really creepy. I don't like this. Cheon should really stop teasing him like this. It's dangerous. Cheon himself was surprised by the look in his eyes. Haewon knelt to the ground, tying up his shoes, and asked Cheon when he grew up so much because he used to be kind of cute. Cheon glared at him, wondering what he was even blabbering. He thought to himself how he has never met a person this hard to read. He seems normal, but whenever it's about Yoon Seom, he's totally a different person. Cheon was still thinking about all this when Haewon got up, and before he knew it, he was swept off his feet and fell flat to the ground. When did you tie both legs together? Cheon yelled, swearing at him at the same time. Haewon grinned mischievously, saying he didn't know because he was busy messing up. Cheon glared at him, thinking to himself that he's such a bastard. Oh boy, these two are so messed up. The race began, and the two boys struggled nonstop and were left behind because they had no coordination. But in the end, they won because Haewon carried Cheon to the finish line since piggybacking was allowed. These two would have made a perfect match in a BL story. It was the girls' dodgeball finale between Class 3 and Class 8, that's Yoon Seom's class and Kim Gaben's class. Oh no! How'd Yoon Seom play? At a corner were Minji and Yuna, proudly telling Yoon Seom that they are guaranteed victory because she's going to be playing. Yoon Seom smiled anxiously, thinking to herself that this is really bad, because just earlier she got pushed down the stairs and went falling. If not for her smart athletic moves that made her land on her feet, she would have been seriously injured. Though she landed on her toes, she sprained her ankle because it's been too long since she did so. This game is clearly going to be a disaster. How's our girl going to win with a sprained ankle? The crazy part is she didn't even get to see the face of who pushed her down, but she told herself she wouldn't let it go. She must surely catch the culprit. The match began, and the first ball was targeted at Yoon Seom, and she barely dodged it. Her classmates and friends were confused because Yoon Seom plays better than this, and the other team were targeting only her. Our girl was at the point of losing it because the more she ran, the more her ankle hurt. Cheon, on seeing how Class 8 were playing, asked if they were crazy. He yelled, saying they are attacking in ways that are too dangerous, and Yoon Seom doesn't look like she's in a good condition either. Haewon stood still at a corner, glaring furiously at how everything was going. Bro looks really pissed off. They better not mess with his girl any longer. He watched closely as Kim Gaben threw the ball at Yoon Seom, who was trying to get herself together. She couldn't dodge and fell to the ground, shouting because of her sprained leg. Kim Gaben smirked and asked Seom why she was exaggerating by falling down when she wasn't even hit hard. Someone really needs to teach this girl a lesson. Kim Gaben grabbed the ball and was ready to throw it at Yoon Seom, asking her to get ready and stop pretending. Yoon Seom covered her face with her hand, expecting the hit, but when she closed her eyes, she didn't feel anything. She opened her eyes gently, only to see Haewon right in front of her as a shield. OMG, this is it. Haewon glared at Gabon, who was shocked that he took the hit for Yoon Seom. He stood up and told the rest that he was taking Yoon Seom out because she looked injured. Everyone in Class 3 knew it was game over for them because if Yoon Seom leaves, they'll surely lose. They pleaded with her to at least manage and play the first half. Yoon Seom, in her thoughts, was considering that because they've come really far to lose. I think I can keep going a bit more, Yoon Seom said as she got up. Everyone was happy, but Cheon wasn't in support of that. Haewon turned angrily to his classmates, who were being selfish, and asked if what really mattered to them was winning while neglecting someone's health. Before they knew it, he swept her off her feet and into his arms, saying he'd take her to the nurse first. Yoon Seom was so shocked. He left the crowd on the field and headed towards the infirmary. The others watched him leave and couldn't help pointing out that this was his first time swearing, and it's really scary. Haewon, on the other hand, was surprised by the fact that he was dropping the act of a perfect guy. Y'all can say what you want. I don't care. All that matters is Yoon Seom is finally in the arms of the one she's been trying to avoid the entire week. At the infirmary, he sprayed disinfectant on her sprained leg, and both were silent. This is definitely awkward. Yoon Seom thought about how startled she was that he carried her. Before now, while in the hallway, she yelled at him to put her down because she was fine, but he coldly told her to stay still. The cold expression he had on his face back then was just like Killian's. She wondered why he was looking so angry. Was it because she kept avoiding him? Just when she was still wondering, Haewon broke the silence by calling out her name, and she answered. It must have hurt a lot, but why did you hold it in? He asked softly, adding sadly that she told him not to hide things from her and to lean on her instead. Yoon Seom asked if he was angry, and he replied that he wasn't, rather, he was worried. Seom was shocked. She quickly apologized for making him worry, but deep down, she was more worried that her heart was suddenly beating fast. The only thing she could think of was getting away from him. She got up immediately and thanked him sharply for treating her, and was about to run off in the name of going to the classroom to rest. Just as she was about opening the door, he called out to her, telling her to wait. She froze immediately because he asked why she kept avoiding him. Even a fool can tell when someone is avoiding them. Talk more of Haewon. Yoon Seom thought to herself that he's such a straightforward person. She exhaled immediately, concluding that she should really face it now, because running away wasn't something that even suited her personality. She turned to him, her eyes looking down, as she told him that whatever they did in that storage room was very embarrassing, but it was all a rescue attempt. Still, she just couldn't bring herself to look at his face ever since. Rescue attempt, he asked, and she looked up at him, only to be shocked when he said shyly that it was his first kiss and not a rescue attempt. Oh my, this male is so cute. Nah, he's still Killian, bet. Yoon Seom was totally confused. She tried to process what he just said and how sad his face had become. She felt like garbage for making such a pretty boy sulk. It was at that moment that she realized that it wasn't only his first kiss, but also her first kiss in this life. She clung both of her hands together, and he smiled, holding them and calling out to her, asking if she hated the fact that she kissed him. Is that why you keep avoiding me? He asked, and she stammered, saying that wasn't it at all. He asked what the reason was, but everywhere fell silent. He moved closer to her, still holding onto her hands, as he whispered to her that if she didn't hate it. Before he could finish his statement, she thought to herself that it's not like she hated it. Haewon grabbed one of her hands and placed a gentle kiss on it as he looked into her eyes romantically, saying she has to take responsibility for him. Yoon Seom's cheeks turned red instantly at what he just said, and she realized that it was truly his first time. She thought about how Killian is different from Haewon, because the one in front of her right now is different. He is Lee Haewon. She wondered why she even mistook them in the first place, because obviously she can see now that their memories are different, and she has Lee Haewon on her mind. Oh girl, you're completely finished. Like you fell for his act. Seom immediately grabbed Haewon by his shirt boldly, saying they should try it one more time. She concluded in her thoughts that they weren't in a book from hundreds of years ago, so it's not really bad if she matches physically first. Seom pulled him into a kiss, and he was completely shocked. I bet he literally didn't see that coming. She kissed him, and he suddenly began laughing. She asked why he was laughing because they had to do it properly. He smiled, saying they wouldn't get it like this. He called out to her, telling her to close her eyes, and she was stunned. She shut her eyes immediately, and he made the first move, pulling her into a smooth kiss. They broke apart and stared into each other's eyes affectionately, then continued. Oh my gosh. There are too many kisses coming in now. I can't believe he pinned her to the wall and kissed her. Somebody needs to help our girl, or maybe she doesn't want help. What if they get caught? Someone might be watching. Class 3, after all, won the overall championship and celebrated happily in class with lots of pizza and drinks. Even though Yoon Seom didn't completely participate in some of the final games because of her injured ankle, the class was still proud. Minjun suggested they give all the pizza to Lee Haewon because he was literally the one who made winning possible after she left. Yoona agreed completely. Yoona demonstrated how Haewon stood in front of everyone and questioned them for being selfish before carrying her away from the field. Minji fantasized it like a webtoon male lead going crazy for his girl. He even played football so well and ended up making them the overall champions. Yoon Seom nonchalantly told them she was surprised that he could actually do all that. The girls suddenly gathered around her, curiously asking her to spill the truth about her relationship with Haewon. Huh? What do you mean by my relationship? She asked, confused. She thought about how she kissed Lee Haewon, and this time it wasn't just a rescue attempt, but a real kiss. So does that mean they're dating? She wondered, then suddenly shook the idea off, because one needs a confession to confirm that. She shoved pizza into her mouth, concluding that she would wait for him to decide, because she shouldn't do that herself too, right? Yoon Seom glanced at Haewon, where he was chatting with the guys, and couldn't help thinking to herself that he's handsome, and she knows that, but he also has a very pretty smile, and he calls her Seom so cutely and calmly. While she was still staring, he turned, and they made eye contact. He pointed out that something was on her lips, but poor Seom, seeing him point at her lips, immediately misunderstood and thought he wanted another kiss. Since when did our girl have such a naughty mindset? Haewon approached her, and she shyly looked away, hoping he wasn't coming to kiss her in public or tell her they needed to meet again secretly. He called out her name from behind, and she turned immediately. He leaned closer and wiped off the little bit of pizza beside her lips and chuckled. She thanked him, and then noticed that everyone in class was now looking at them, and her kiss delusion suddenly felt less embarrassing than this moment. Her cheeks turned red at the thought of him not caring about his surroundings at all. Cheon, at a corner, after seeing this, looked away annoyingly. Poor guy. He's watching his crush experience her first love with a guy he dislikes. That must be so annoying. On the other hand was Kim Gabin and her friends, who gathered at a corner. The other girls were talking about how it seemed like Yoon Seom and Haewon were dating, for him to have protected her like that, and since when it started. Frustrated, Gabin thought to herself that she even thought he was gay because he hasn't had any scandals before. One of the girls laughed at Gabin, saying it's unfortunate for her that she's one-sidedly in love with Haewon. Shut up, Gabin yelled as she cursed at them. The girls went on mocking her about how Yoon Seom, her lackey, has changed so much and has pushed her aside badly. Kim Gabin got so pissed, and before they knew it, she grabbed one of the girl's hair and started pulling aggressively while cursing. She shoved her away, and the girl fell. Gabin gritted her teeth angrily and shouted at them to all go away already. Behind her was someone dressed in black, approaching. She turned and saw Haewon, looking very serious. Oh my, why's our boy here? Gabin called out, surprised, and asked why he was there. Haewon pulled down his nose mask and told the other girls gently to excuse them. They left immediately because Gabin had already pissed them off. Kim Gabin asked what he wanted from her, and he told her he knew it was her. She asked what he was talking about, and he coldly replied, "You're the one who hurt Yoon Seom." Oh my, what's that aura? Girl, you're in trouble. Kim Gabin stepped back slowly, asking what the hell he was saying. Haewon told her how she purposely aimed for Yoon Seom's injured spot and kept throwing the ball. Kim Gabin yelled immediately, saying he's ridiculous for thinking she had something to do with Yoon Seom's injured ankle. Haewon sighed and took off his cap, asking how she knew it was her ankle that got injured when no one mentioned that. Oops, she just got caught. Why is he looking so hot even when showing his bad side? Kim Gabin froze immediately, wondering what was suddenly wrong with Haewon, or if he was on drugs or something. She stepped back, thinking to herself that he's like a completely different person. She accidentally stepped on a stone and fell down. Seeing this, Haewon looked beside him, and his eyes caught a crate of bottles. He picked one and leaned towards her on the ground. Before she knew it, he grabbed her leg, and she shouted because of how hard his grip was. She yelled at him to let go, but instead she froze when he told her she should have thought about this before breaking someone's leg. Haewon raised the bottle and was about to hit her. Holy Yandere, why is he so fine? But at this point, let's call him a crazy psychopath. Kim Gabin shut her eyes immediately, and when she opened them, she was trembling with tears in her eyes. She looked down and noticed he didn't hit her with it, but just broke it between her legs. I won't warn you twice, he said, telling her never to appear in front of Yoon Seom again. Gabin nodded in fear, and he turned away, leaving. She couldn't help blurting out that he's crazy. Gabin is such a scared rat. Look how scared she was just now. The next day, Haewon visited his psychiatrist. The doctor asked if he has been sleeping well lately. Haewon replied, saying yes, and the doctor asked again if he had had any seizures and told him he should make sure to avoid dark places. Haewon smiled, saying he shouldn't worry because that wouldn't happen unless someone locks him up. He asked the doctor if he could go, but the doctor stopped him by asking if he's still seeing hallucinations. Haewon glanced at him coldly and suddenly smiled, saying no. The doctor kept bombarding him with questions, and he laughed at some point, telling the doctor that he's saying things that don't make sense, because it is impossible and he's totally fine now. He left, and the doctor sighed in worry, looking at his file and mumbling to himself that he still can't figure this guy out. Haewon visits a psychiatrist? Oh my. He's indeed a psychopath like we claim. Unbelievable. Outside the door, Haewon thought to himself that there's no need to see hallucinations anymore because the real thing is now in front of him, and he's completely blinded by her, both in this life and in his past life. Flashback to the novel, Killian, after invading and taking down all the guards, was about to leave when one of them, who wasn't fully dead yet, spoke up, saying he must have been sent by the Duke. The knight reminded him that the country is literally rotting all because of the Duke, but before he could say any other word, Killian finished him off completely, saying that's not something he needs to know. Oh my, look at those bodies. Now we're really getting a view of how everything happened. So all the bad things Killian in the novel was doing were under the Duke's command? Killian left the place and met up with the Duke in private and saluted him. The Duke praised him for handling it cleanly this time too. The Duke mocked him, saying who could have ever imagined that the greatest assassin who makes all the nobles tremble is a poor orphan. Killian glared at the Duke immediately he said that, and the Duke warned him to watch his gaze before kicking him angrily. Killian bowed immediately, and the Duke said that's how he should be and was about to slap him on the face, but Killian held his hand immediately, saying, not the face. Oh my. He talks back to his master. Well, of course he's right. He shouldn't ruin our pretty face. The Duke burst out into laughter and laughed uncontrollably before asking if he's really afraid that Ines would see it. Killian didn't say a word, and the Duke pulled off his head cover, saying there's really no one who cares about Ines as much as he does, even him, her father. Holy moly. So the Duke who made Killian a famous assassin is actually Ines' father in the novel? No way, this is entirely messed up. The Duke told him that indeed, his daughter would be so heartbroken if she saw wounds on him, because she has such a soft heart and cherishes him so much, without even realizing that she's his leash. The truth is Ines really led Killian to whatever bad ending we got in the novel. Because if she hadn't adopted him, maybe he would have ended up in an orphanage and turned out better, right? Instead of being used by the Duke like this, the Duke grabbed Killian's hair from behind, saying he has good news for him, and it is from the Emperor. He sent a personal letter saying he wants Ines to marry the Crown Prince, he said, laughing and leaving Killian in shock. The Duke let go of his hair, saying he can't even hide his expression whenever the topic is about Ines. He turned away, saying he should try lying flatter or begging. Maybe he'll consider sending him as her personal guard in the palace, to watch another man have the woman he cherishes with his life in his arms. It would be such an entertaining sight, right? The Duke said as he stepped outside the dungeon, smiling. He ordered the guards to keep Killian tamed. Oh my gosh. This is really a shocking plot twist. I can't believe that this is what Killian went through in the novel and Yoon Seom didn't know. And the crazy part is that her father in the novel ended up as Killian's father in the real world. This writer is really messing with our heads. The guard stepped up and beat his back badly without touching his face. Killian endured everything. All he could think of was Ines. Poor boy. I feel so sorry for him now. Walking through the hallway, Haewon thought to himself that his craving for her is something that didn't fade away as time passed, making him wonder if this is some kind of punishment he has to endure. Moving forward, he froze on seeing Yoon Seom sitting on a hospital seat with some kids. What is she doing here? Meanwhile, Yoon Seom, who had gone to the hospital to get herself checked, was on a call with her uncle. She told him not to worry because she had only sprained a ligament, not broken a bone. Here comes the overprotective uncle. Uncle and who wasn't having any of that. He yelled at her, asking what on earth she had been doing to hurt her leg. Last time, you stayed out all night locked in a storage room, and now this too, he shouted. He complained that he had raised her carefully since childhood, and now she was giving him gray hairs. Yoon Seom apologized for making him worry and promised to be more careful. As she turned to the other side, she noticed two children. One of them was crying and begging their older sister not to leave. Taking a closer look, Yoon Seom recognized the older sister. It was Dajeong, her classmate. Dajeong, on the other hand, was yelling at Dasol, telling her to just sit and wait because she wouldn't be gone for long. In the middle of her frustration, she heard someone call her name. On turning around, she was surprised to see Yoon Seom. You need to go see the doctor, right? Seom asked with a bright smile. I can watch the kids for you. Dajeong hesitated for a moment, but before she could answer, a nurse called out for the guardian of Park Jumja. Yoon Seom, I'm really sorry. I just have to stop by her hospital room. Dajeong apologized. Seom waved her off. Don't worry. Take your time. And just like that, Dajeong left the kids with her. Yoon Seom leaned toward the twins and asked if they were ready to have some fun. The two children simply stared at her with confused expressions. Meanwhile, Seom laughed to herself. After all, she had raised Killian in the novel. Surely these two kids wouldn't be a problem, right? Just a few minutes later, Yoon Seom, who claimed to be a pro at parenting, was already exhausted. This is so hilarious. She's forgetting that Killian in the novel was a guy who loved her, while these two are a pair of troublemakers. She only managed to calm them down by giving them her phone to watch YouTube. At that moment, she finally understood why so many young parents bought tablets for their children. Raising twins really wasn't a joke. They either teamed up and frustrated their guardian together, or fought each other nonstop. And of course, these two kids gave her a hard time. She let out a sigh and mumbled to herself. Dajeong is really amazing for taking care of these kids all this time. Just then, she heard someone call her name. Turning around, she saw Lee Haewon waving at her. She asked what he was doing at the hospital, and he simply replied that he had come for a checkup and that he was completely fine. "What about you?" he asked. She told him she was there because of her injured ankle. Haewon's face immediately fell. "What did the doctor say? Are you okay?" Seom smiled. "Don't worry. I'm fine." Before he could say anything else, she grabbed his arm lightly and asked if he had any free time. And that was how Lee Haewon ended up babysitting the kids with her. Dajeong and her twin brother soon started playing house together, but things quickly turned into an argument because he refused to agree that pink was the better color. Crazy how these kids turned playing husband and wife into nothing but fighting. Haewon tried to step in and stop the argument. "Don't fight," but little Dajeong immediately cut him off. "Don't talk to your mother like that." Haewon froze. "Is that how you speak to your mom and dad?" "Call me mom," Dajeong shouted. The poor guy stood there in shock before eventually agreeing to be their son. Poor boy will do anything to look good in front of Yoon Seom. Watching from the corner, Seom couldn't stop laughing. She never thought she would live to see the day when Lee Haewon would end up in such an awkward situation. And somehow, it was actually adorable. At least she could finally get some rest. If Haewon wasn't here, she would have been the one struggling alone. Parenting really did require teamwork. The twins continued arguing. Dajeong insisted that pink was the strongest color for the Meow Meow Rangers, while her brother stubbornly argued that red was stronger. Yoon Seom had been enjoying the show from a safe distance, but her peace didn't last long. The twins suddenly ran over and asked her to settle the debate. Which color is stronger? It was at that exact moment that our darling Yoon Seom realized she was doomed, because no matter which color she picked, one of them was definitely going to end up crying. Yoon Seom immediately stood up and declared, "I don't know which color is stronger. But I know one thing. I am the strongest." The twins blinked in confusion. Dajeong asked suspiciously, "You can't do a mid-air flip or a backspin?" Yoon Seom smiled confidently. Without warning, she performed a perfect backflip, followed by several mid-air flips before landing smoothly on the ground like the pro she was. "Well?" she asked proudly. "How was that?" Then she lowered her voice dramatically. "Actually, I'm a secret agent for the Meow Meow Rangers." The twins were completely amazed. Their eyes sparkled as they showered her with praise and begged her to do it again. But before she could agree, Lee Haewon stepped forward and gently grabbed the twins. "Yoon Seom is hurt and needs to rest," he said. "Come play with me instead." He then turned to Seom and told her not to overdo it. The twins protested loudly. "We want to see her do it again." Thankfully, Haewon managed to distract them by mentioning an ice cream store. And just like that, he left with the children while telling Yoon Seom to get some rest. Watching his back, she felt unexpectedly touched. He was playing with the kids without a single complaint. "How can he be so sweet?" she mumbled. Meanwhile, Dajeong kept poking Haewon's face. "You're so handsome," she declared. "You should marry me when I grow up." Later, after the kids had fallen asleep, everyone sat quietly on a nearby bench. Yoon Seom thanked Haewon for helping her. "It would have been much harder without you." Spending time with Lee Haewon had become so comfortable for her. A man who was usually strict about his boundaries somehow always made time for her unreasonable requests. He was always the first person to help her whenever she needed it. The affection he showed her wasn't something he gave away easily. And because of that, her heart couldn't help fluttering. She had always wanted this kind of ordinary, everyday romance. Not only in this life, but in her previous life as well. Then she suddenly paused. Wait, they're not even dating yet. So when exactly was he planning to confess? Almost as if he had heard her thoughts, Lee Haewon suddenly called her name. Yoon Seom. She looked at him. "There's something I really want to tell you." Her eyes widened. Was this finally it? Trying to stay calm, she asked what he wanted to say. But before he could answer, "Yoon Seom." Dajeong's voice interrupted them. The timing couldn't have been worse. Dajeong rushed over and thanked her repeatedly. Then she suddenly noticed Haewon standing nearby. Her expression froze. "Lee Haewon is here too?" she asked. For some reason, she looked uncomfortable. She quickly turned back to Yoon Seom and thanked her again for taking care of the twins while she spent time helping her grandmother, who was currently sick and undergoing several tests. Yoon Seom smiled. "It was nothing. If you ever need help again, just call me." Dajeong looked genuinely touched. Soon after, Seom and Haewon waved goodbye to the children and left. The moment they disappeared from sight, Dajeong suddenly pulled Dasol into a tight hug. The little girl was shocked. Yooni, what did you think about that man? Dajeong asked carefully. Dasol tilted her head. He's handsome. Dajeong hesitated. Did he scare you by any chance? That's weird. Is Dajeong suspicious of Haewon? Why? What's going on? The next day, Yoon Seom happily walked out wearing an outfit she wanted Minju to see. Unfortunately, Minju looked completely unimpressed. Yoon Seom immediately became nervous. Does this one not look good either? Why do you only own clothes with dull colors? Minju cried. And why is everything oversized? This is supposed to be a date. Yoon Seom pouted. How am I supposed to own date outfits when my uncle buys all my clothes? She couldn't help feeling disappointed. Today was special. She really wanted to look nice. After all, she was going on a date with Lee Haewon. Oh my, it's finally happening. Will our girl finally get confessed to by our dearest psychopath? Yesterday, after saying goodbye to the twins, Yoon Seom and Haewon had walked home together. When they reached her house, she thanked him for escorting her home. Just as she was about to go inside, he suddenly called out to her. Wait. She turned around. What is it? Haewon smiled. Aren't you going to give me a prize? A prize? He nodded. You gave Dasol chocolate for behaving well. He took a step closer. You said I worked hard too. Then he lightly grabbed her wrist. So what about me? His smile became even softer. Shouldn't I get a prize too? Yoon Seom instantly covered her burning cheeks. Why was he acting so cute? Seeing her reaction, Haewon chuckled. Should I just choose my own prize? And that was how they ended up agreeing to meet this weekend. Remembering everything now, Yoon Seom couldn't stop blushing. She looked sadly at Minju. What should I do? This day is really special to me. Minju sighed dramatically. I knew this was going to happen. Then she opened her bag and began pulling out clothes, accessories, and makeup products. Yoon Seom's eyes widened. Kong Minju, you're amazing. She looked so emotional she might cry. Minju smiled proudly. Of course. It's the least I can do. You're going on a date. Minju is really that friend everyone needs. Soon, Yoon Seom began trying on different outfits. Oh my, our girl is so pretty. I like the second outfit, but since it's a date, the first one might be better, right? No matter what she wore, she looked adorable. You're cute in all of them, Minju said. Then she pinched her cheeks. Just like my baby squirrel. She grinned mischievously. That's exactly why Haewon fell for you. Minju is such a fangirl and, honestly, we love her for it. After getting fully dressed up, Yoon Seom headed to the place where they were supposed to meet. Looking at herself, she could hardly believe it. She was so dressed up that she barely recognized herself. Then another thought suddenly struck her. What if she's the only one dressed up? To her surprise, Lee Haewon was also dressed much more formally than usual. Yoon Seom immediately relaxed. Thank goodness. She wasn't the only one. Not far away, several girls had already surrounded Haewon. They couldn't stop praising him. He looks like a model. He's exactly my type. One girl even asked for his number. Yoon Seom watched everything from a distance. She expected some attention. But she definitely didn't expect him to get hit on by college students. Then Haewon smiled politely. I'm sorry. The girls brightened. But his next words completely destroyed their hopes. I have a girlfriend. Yoon Seom nearly choked. A girlfriend? Since when? Are we officially dating now? If not, where exactly did this girlfriend come from? Before she could process it, Haewon spotted her. His entire face lit up. He happily waved and walked over. When did you get here? He asked. I've been waiting for almost 30 minutes. The girls followed his gaze. The moment they saw Yoon Seom, they instantly believed him. He really did have a girlfriend. Completely embarrassed, they quickly left. Meanwhile, Yoon Seom secretly sighed. Hopefully she'll become his real girlfriend soon. Haewon looked her up and down. Then he smiled. You look beautiful today. Yoon Seom froze. Your hair looks nice and that dress really suits you. Her face immediately turned red. You look better, she replied shyly. Then she added honestly. And prettier too. I really love how smooth he is with compliments in this life. Haewon's expression suddenly turned gloomy. Do you think I'm handsome? He asked. Yoon Seom blinked before smiling. Of course. It's nice when someone is handsome. A smile immediately appeared on Haewon's face. What a relief. At least he still had this handsome face in this life. Arg. This guy is so full of himself. How can he treat his looks like they're just a shell? Haewon then asked what she wanted to do next. But Yoon Seom caught him completely off guard. I like the new you. His eyes widened slightly. Why? Why was she able to say things like that while looking at him with such honest eyes? Throughout his life, everyone had always wanted him to become something else. In his previous life, her father wanted him to be a loyal dog. In this life, his own father wanted him to become the perfect son. A beautiful ornament. Nothing more. People hated him for simply being himself. So why was she different? Why was she the only person who kept telling him that it was okay to be himself? For the first time, he wondered if he could allow himself to relax. Just this once. There's still so much we don't know. And whatever happened to make our poor boy turn out this way, it was never just because of him. It's always been the people around him. He's so traumatized. The two eventually ended up at a movie theater. As Yoon Seom sat down, she remembered her old life. Back then, she had been a single nerd who loved romance web novels and webtoons. She spent countless hours reading them. And somehow, thanks to all that reading, she ended up possessing one. Because of those stories, she had always been curious about what a first date at a movie theater would feel like. Would things happen the way they did in novels? Would there be accidental physical contact? Just then, Haewon's hand brushed against hers as he reached into the popcorn bucket she was holding. Yoon Seom's cheeks instantly turned red. She glanced at him, but he looked completely normal, as if nothing had happened. She was speechless. How could he sit there eating popcorn and watching the movie so calmly? Meanwhile, she was practically dying inside. Feeling frustrated, she stuffed a handful of popcorn into her mouth. Seriously, was she the only one taking this date so seriously? As she stared at Haewon, who seemed completely focused on the movie, he suddenly turned and looked at her. Yoon Seom panicked. Her phone slipped from her hands and fell to the floor. Oh no! She quickly bent down to pick it up. After searching around in the dark, she finally found it. Unfortunately, Haewon reached for it at the exact same moment. Their hands touched. Both of them froze. The atmosphere instantly became tense. At least for Yoon Seom. Haewon quietly held her hand and helped her sit back down. And somehow, they never let go. Are you comfortable? He asked. Why yes. Her answer said yes. Her sweaty hands said otherwise. Haewon smiled. Then, without warning, he pushed up the armrest separating their seats. The small barrier between them disappeared. He leaned closer. It's more comfortable this way. Yoon Seom's brain completely stopped working. She had no idea what to say. No idea how to react. One thing was certain though. Our guy Lee Haewon is unpredictable. And judging from how red her face was, her cheeks were doing a terrible job of hiding her feelings. The movie itself was surprisingly sad. It told the story of two people who became lovers. However, a terrible misunderstanding eventually caused the man to take the woman's life. But the story didn't end there. Both of them were reincarnated in another lifetime. Filled with regret, the man tried to start over. He wanted another chance to fix everything. But the woman refused. Through tears, she told him they should never cross paths again. Not even in another life. In the end, the man sacrificed his own life to save hers. And she never even learned about his sacrifice. The movie ended with the woman moving forward and starting a new life without him. So this movie is basically a parallel to their story. When are we finally getting the full backstory? And please don't tell me their love story is going to end like this movie. I really hope not. Yoon Seom was furious when the credits started rolling. What kind of ending was that? She immediately turned toward Haewon to hear his opinion. Then she froze. Lee Haewon was crying. Actually crying. Yoon Seom nearly jumped out of her seat. Wait, are you seriously crying because of a movie? Haewon looked down. His voice was quiet. The woman must have been tired and fed up with everything. Yoon Seom blinked. What? He swallowed hard. She must have been so tired of the man that she couldn't bring herself to forgive him. Yoon Seom fell silent. The more she thought about it, the more she felt he had a point. Without realizing it, she began comparing the movie to her own situation. If she had never met her uncle, if she had never met her friends, if she had never met Haewon, maybe she would still be trapped in her past life. Still clinging to old pain. Still refusing to move forward. But because she met people who cared about her, she finally understood something important. She wasn't Ines. Not anymore. And there was no point in endlessly holding onto the past without giving someone the chance to start over. Afterward, Haewon excused himself and headed to the restroom. He washed his face with the cold water running over his hands. For a moment, he simply stood there staring into the sink. His expression darkened. The water looked red. Like blood. Haewon's breathing stopped. A voice echoed inside his mind. How dare you? How dare you try to live comfortably? How dare you forget? There's still so much blood on your hands. Poor boy, his past is really haunting him. But I still can't stop wondering. How terrible could that misunderstanding be for a man to end up taking the life of the woman he loved? Back in the novel, he remembered how Ines had come before him crying and begging him to spare her younger siblings and nanny. Instead of agreeing to her plea, he approached her and said that whenever she's asking someone for something, she has to show her cards. He lifted her face with his hand, saying she already knew what he wanted. He added that her crying face was so pretty, but he would rather see her cry for another reason. He grabbed her and said they should go to his room like this. Ines pulled away in disgust, asking him to stop it already because they were once family. Killian's face turned cold. He grabbed her wrist, dragged her along with him, and pushed her onto the couch. Moving closer, he told her to stop clinging to her pride. He untied his necktie and told her to give in. Maybe then he'd look into her pleas. Ines begged him as he climbed over her, saying she didn't want to lose him like this. Killian smiled and said he'd like to tell her a fun fact. That was that he had never considered her family, not even for a single moment. He told her it wasn't like he was some stray mutt on the street. Who would want to do such a thing with their family? Rather, he was raised by her. Before he could say anything more, she slapped him. He rolled his tongue against the cheek she had struck. Oh my goodness. Why is he so hot? This author is really messing with us. Oops, things are serious here, I forgot. Ines cried out, saying she cherished him more than anyone else. He told her she only cherished him as a toy since she was that duke's daughter who needed something to show sympathy toward. But it was all over now because he was going to end everyone. Remembering all this, Haewon told himself that he knows and doesn't need anyone to remind him. Yoon Seom, who was also in the washroom, overheard some ladies talking about how the ending of the movie sucked too. She was glad she wasn't the only one who thought the movie really sucked. She wondered what was wrong with Haewon's taste. Just then, she heard the girls saying that the movie was actually based on a web novel, and the web novel was just as childish. The title was something like The Tyrant Crown Prince's Obsession. On hearing this, Yoon Seom froze immediately. She turned toward the movie banner and looked below the author's name. It was the same author who had written the novel she possessed. Why didn't I think of this until now? I should try finding them, she thought. Then she suddenly wondered how the author would react if she told them she had possessed a novel they wrote. That would clearly make her look like a crazy person. Still, she was determined to try. Maybe she might find out if there was anyone else who had been possessed by the novel too. I really don't think this is a good idea. The next place the two went was a restaurant. Yoon Seom was shocked by the prices on the menu. She wondered why he'd bring her to such an expensive place when he knew she was the one paying. After all, she had said at the theater that she'd pay for the next thing since he paid there. She began wondering if he was a rich kid. But then she shook the idea away. Why would a rich kid ride a public bus with her every morning? She concluded that he must be pushing himself too hard since he was planning to confess to her today. Just then, Haewon called out to her. He asked if she had finally decided what to eat. He pointed out that the seafood pasta was really good here, and since she was allergic to shrimp. She immediately interrupted him. Huh? A shrimp allergy? I don't have one. There's nothing I can't eat. He looked surprised before suddenly smiling. I must be mistaken. She agreed, and they decided to order it. Just then, she remembered that there was a time she had a shrimp allergy. But that was when she possessed Ines. She asked Lee Haewon if they could get a large portion of pasta, and he smiled cutely. I can't believe she just overlooked the fact that he talked about an allergy from her past life. They were done eating, and when Haewon went to pay, the cashier was stunned by how handsome he looked. She couldn't help thanking God that he came during her shift. She even offered to let him use her discount card since he didn't have one. Yoon Seom watched them from afar and got lost in her own thoughts about why Haewon still hadn't confessed to her. She wondered if she was overreacting about this whole thing. Then she recalled that Haewon had asked her to meet him on the weekend, not to go on a date. For him to say, let's meet during the weekend, is different from saying, let's go on a date, right? Her thoughts kept escalating until she started wondering if he was in an open relationship with her. I can't believe we're just locking lips and not dating. Then she remembered that they're living in a generation where things like that can happen, so she shouldn't be surprised. Poor girl, she's so desperate now. Watching her man get the attention of every girl must be so sad. And him not confessing is even sadder. She ended up concluding that he was a bad guy. Just then, someone called out from behind. She turned around. It was a pretty young girl smiling brightly and asking if she remembered her. I didn't expect to see you here because the prices are quite high, she said. Yoon Seom thought to herself, of course she remembered her. Why the hell would this little peasant say that to our girl's face? Yoon Seom thought to herself, how could she forget her when she was literally someone she had met briefly in middle school? Back then, she would always talk about how hard it must be for Yoon Seom to live with her uncle because she herself couldn't live without her mom. When Yoon Seom started getting bullied by Kim Daebin, she was the first person to run away from her side so she wouldn't get mixed up in her mess. Yoon Seom felt it would be exhausting to deal with her, so it was better to just ignore her. It's been a while, but I'm a bit busy, Yoon Seom said and was about to leave. The girl immediately took offense, thinking to herself, what's with this loser's reaction? She didn't want to let it slide and immediately called out to her boyfriend, making Yoon Seom freeze in place. Her ugly boyfriend came over looking flashy with all his extravagant and expensive accessories. Yoon Seom, this is my boyfriend, she said, forcing an introduction that wasn't necessary. She continued bragging, saying that she had told her boyfriend they didn't need to come to such an expensive restaurant, but since it was their 100th day anniversary, she just had to. Yoon Seom stood there with an expression that clearly showed she didn't care. You've always been single since birth, right? Or do you have a boyfriend now? The girl asked, throwing a stray bullet with her words. Our poor girl. How dare she say that? Yoon Seom didn't even know what to say. She wondered if she should just play along and claim she had a boyfriend too. But then, even if she didn't have one now, she was sure she'd have one soon. The girl laughed loudly. Don't bother. You really don't have to have a boyfriend because being in a relationship these days is such a hassle. But it's still nice to have one. Right in the middle of this whole drama, their guardian angel Haewon showed up and called out to his beloved. Yoon Seom smiled and thanked him for the meal, leaving the girl and her boyfriend completely shocked by how handsome, beautiful, and stunning Haewon was. Yoon Seom was about to introduce Haewon to them and felt ashamed that she had to say he was just her classmate. She really wanted to say he was her boyfriend so badly. If I were in her shoes, I don't care how Haewon would feel or react. I'd definitely say he's my boyfriend. When Haewon heard her introduce him as just her classmate, he wrapped an arm around her shoulder and pulled her closer. We aren't just friends, Seom. Yoon Seom was completely stunned. The girl was shocked that such a handsome and gorgeous guy was chasing after Yoon Seom. She glanced at her boyfriend and thought to herself that even though he wasn't as handsome as Haewon, at least he had money. To her surprise, her boyfriend approached Haewon and praised his watch. He pointed out that it was a limited edition and asked how he got it. The girl was so embarrassed that she immediately grabbed her boyfriend and left. Haewon turned to Yoon Seom and asked if he had made a mistake by any chance. But she proudly punched his shoulder. You did very well. She thought to herself that a beautiful person is powerful just by existing. It is indeed good to have at least a gorgeous and beautiful person beside you, either as a friend or a boyfriend. It was evening and they headed home. Yoon Seom couldn't believe he still hadn't confessed to her, though he had publicly said they weren't just friends. Then does that mean they're friends with benefits? Her expression changed the moment that thought crossed her mind. Immediately, Haewon called out to her. She turned curiously. He simply told her to get inside safely. That was when she realized they had already arrived at her doorstep. Yoon Seom looked at him. Don't you have anything to say to me? Haewon looked confused. After thinking for a moment, he thanked her for spending the day with him. Yoon Seom became annoyed. Not that, she shouted. Finally deciding to make a move herself, she grabbed his wrist and dragged him all the way to a corner. Then she pinned him against the wall by slamming her hands on either side of him, blocking his escape. Haewon wondered what was about to happen. Then she suddenly spoke out of frustration. Do you really not plan on dating me? What do you mean? He asked in surprise. Aren't we already dating? Yoon Seom was completely shocked. Hold on. He just assumed they're dating without properly asking her out. That's definitely him pretending. Haewon smiled. That must be why you introduced me as your friend back there. Then he looked at her in confusion. But how could you not know we're dating when we literally kissed? I mean, not a rescue kiss, but a real kiss. We even mixed tongues. Yoon Seom immediately covered his mouth. There is absolutely no need to explain it in detail. Haewon gently pulled her hand away. I really need to make this clear to you now. Before she knew it, he lifted her up and placed her on a nearby sitting spot. Then he leaned closer and smiled. We're officially dating. You're the only one who didn't know. What a way to confess. Yoon Seom couldn't hide her feelings anymore. She grabbed his shoulders and confessed. I like you. Girl, you didn't even let him say the words first. You're doing too much. In the end, she didn't care who confessed first. Hearing her say that she liked him, Haewon softly called her name. Seom. Then he sighed. What should I do? He looked at her lovingly. I like you too. Yoon Seom couldn't stop him as he leaned in and kissed her. She was completely swept away by him. When he finally realized how uncontrollable he had become, he quickly apologized and asked if she was okay. He hugged her tightly and admitted that he was struggling. Yoon Seom tilted her head. Is it because of the posture? No, he replied. The two began talking and Haewon asked when day one of their dating should be counted. Is it today? Or back to when we kissed in the storage room? Or maybe the day we kissed in the infirmary, he asked. He also added that they had even raised children together. Yoon Seom told him to stop teasing her. On the other hand, Dajeong stood in a corner, lamenting the fact that this must be her punishment, because she never should have met Yoon Seom again. What the hell is going on here? Isn't Dajeong a girl? Why is she crying and feeling sorry for Yoon Seom? Does she know the truth about the two? Is she from the novel too? Why did this have to happen immediately after the kiss? On getting home, Yoon Seom opened the window and shouted to her uncle that the weather was so good. He was surprised to hear her say that when it was practically raining. During dinner, Yoon Seom was so happy that she asked her uncle why the meal was so delicious. Her uncle was confused because the meal was a bit salty today. He cleared his throat before asking her if she had eaten anything weird today or something. What do you mean? I'm eating very well, she said happily. Her uncle examined her from afar, then smiled, figuring out what was going on. Is dating really that great? He asked. Without realizing it, Yoon Seom answered. It's really great. Boom. He just confirmed it. She immediately froze after realizing what had just happened. She asked if it was that obvious. He smirked and said it was clearly written all over her face and that she might as well put up a billboard saying she had a boyfriend. Yoon Seom tried to explain that her relationship with Haewon was wholesome, but her uncle kept staring at her and suddenly told her he was open-minded now. He took out some cash from his pocket and told her he had increased her allowance so she could go on dates too. Yoon Seom became emotional. Mr. Yoonin, who is the best? Yes, girl. Your uncle deserves the award for the most amazing uncle in the world. Yoon Seom then glanced at her uncle while holding the cash and mentioned how handsome he was. Not only that, he was capable and his heart was as wide as the ocean. Then why on earth didn't he have a girlfriend? Her uncle felt like she had just hit him with a straight bullet. She touched his hand and reminded him how he had told her to do whatever she wanted, and she too would like him to do whatever he wanted instead of spending all his time taking care of her. Hurry and get me a pretty aunt, she said happily while looking at him. In who couldn't help thinking to himself that his little kid was all grown up now. He told her to focus on her dating life and not bother him. She teased him, saying she already had a handsome boyfriend. Well, that's definitely unarguable. Our girl sure does have a handsome boyfriend. Just then, her phone began ringing. On checking it, she wondered why Dajeong was calling at such a late hour. She picked up, and when she heard Dajeong's voice, her expression changed. She asked what was wrong. Dajeong told her that the kids were missing. What the hell? Is it a trap? Meanwhile, on the other hand, Daban was asking a stranger if he really had Dajeong at home. Daseol, seeing her brother talking to a stranger, called out to him and asked why he was following a stranger instead of waiting for her quietly. Daban told his sister that the man was nice because he had offered to give them Dajeong. His sister refused and told him to head back, but they kept arguing. The scary-looking man asked if they were twins and told them he was a nice person and not weird. Do you want to come with mister? He asked. The kids looked at him. Yoon Seom went around looking for the kids and shouting their names. Just the thought of Dajeong saying the kids were missing left her restless. She wondered where they were. Though they had reported it to the police and Dajeong was looking for them too, her intuition remained restless. Just when she was looking for the kids, she spotted Cheon Sion across the street with some other guys. Oh my, this Cheon Sion guy is back in the picture with his elegant, hot looks. Yoon Seom wondered why he was here, and seeing him looking completely like a delinquent left her confused. Cheon Sion was busy staring at a picture of Yoon Seom and her friends on Instagram. The guys scolded him for being on his phone when they were just meeting for the first time in a while. Cheon sighed, lamenting that he had never imagined he'd be staring at a girl's picture like this. The guys suggested he ride a bike instead since it had been a while, but Cheon wasn't having it. He was lost in thought about how Yoon Seom had told him she didn't like the things he was doing and portraying. He got up immediately and told the guys that he was done being a delinquent. One of the handsome guys with wine-colored hair asked what the hell he was saying when his whole appearance screamed delinquent. So how did he intend to stop? Cheon showed off his innocent look, and the guy yelled at him to stop that. Cheon wondered if he should dye his hair black and dress differently. Just when he was still teasing them, he turned and saw Yoon Seom. He couldn't believe it. He wondered if he was beginning to see things because he kept thinking about her. Yoon Seom asked what he was doing here. He replied that it was his former school area, so he came to see his friends. She immediately grabbed his arm and said that was great. She asked if he could help her a bit because Dajeong's siblings were missing. He was surprised. She told him she had been looking for them. He sadly told her that it must be hard. Before she knew it, he placed his hand on her head and told her he had a lot of friends there, so he would make sure they found them and that she shouldn't worry too much. Yoon Seom glanced at him softly. Immediately, one of his friends interrupted and said they needed to head out and find the missing siblings. The handsome wine-haired guy jumped in too and called her their friend. If you're friends with Cheon Sion, then you're our friend as well, he said and asked her to trust them. On seeing the lollipop in his hand, she was relieved because from afar she had thought it was a cigarette in his mouth. She thanked them and thought to herself that they looked like delinquents, but were actually nice. Girl, I don't care whether they're delinquents or not. I already like the wine-haired guy. He's such a bad boy. Seeing how the guys shared the picture of the twins among themselves to start looking, Yoon Seom was glad that they weren't like Kim Gabin's guys. Seeing them take it all seriously, Yoon Seom felt relieved that they would find the twins, and that was all thanks to Cheon's social skills. Cheon reached out his hand to Yoon Seom and asked her to come with him. Second lead syndrome is kicking in again. And I bet our psychopath would be so pissed if he finds out she's with him. They were all over the place calling out to Daseol and Daban. Not too long after, an update was dropped that one of the kids had been seen. Looks like my wine-haired crush found our little Meow Meow agent. Daseol ran toward Yoon Seom, calling her big sister. Yoon Seom hugged her immediately and asked what she was doing there. Daseol cried out, saying she knew she'd come for her. After all, she was part of the Meow Meow task force. Do you know how worried we were? Where's Davin? Yoon Seom asked. Little Dasol explained that some mister had promised to get them Dajeong, and they went with him, but she managed to escape. Big sister, please find Davin. Dasol cried out. Our poor baby. She always fights with her twin, but she really can't live without him. Cheon Sion leaned toward her and smiled, introducing himself as her big sister's friend. He reached out his hands to her, and she went into his arms. He told her not to cry anymore, and to help them find her brother. Seeing how handsome Cheon Sion was, Dasol became convinced that he was part of the Meow Meow Rangers and decided that she would help. So, can you tell us where you were with Davin? He asked. Yoon Seom watched how good he was with kids. Cheon Sion asked Yoon Seom to call Dajeong to come pick up Dasol so that they could go look for Davin themselves before calling the police. Cheon Sion, Yoon Seom, and the wine-haired guy got to the location Dasol had described, and it was a big building. I think we should wait for the police to arrive, the other guy said. Cheon Sion disagreed, saying they didn't have that much time. He asked Yoon Seom not to go in with them and to wait outside in order to direct the police. She tried to insist, but they didn't agree. Cheon Sion told her not to worry and wait a bit. His friend couldn't believe he was dragging him along. This is so hilarious. Look at his face. They opened the door and were shocked to see grown men filling the inside and looking like drug dealers. One of the men told them to go away because this wasn't a place for kids. Cheon saw a secret room in a corner and suddenly had an idea. He pulled his friend's head and they both bowed. He lied, saying they were there to learn from them. Jun was confused and asked what the hell he was saying. Cheon pushed him into their midst to stall for time while he went through the secret door. Jun was meant to distract the men and he didn't know what to do. He cursed Cheon in his mind before coming up with an idea. Shall I sing for you guys? He asked, adding that he was a phenomenal singer. Cheon managed to sneak in and upon opening the door, he saw Davin inside. Our little Davin is here. Cheon smiled and introduced himself as Dajeong's friend, saying they should go home. On hearing this, Davin's eyes got teary, and he ran over to Cheon, asking if their big sister had really sent him. Cheon winked, telling him they had a special mission, so he should play along. On the other hand, Jun was actually trying his best, singing rubbish to the gang members. They lamented how much he sucked, but wondered why they hadn't thrown him out. Cheon tried to sneak out with Davin, but Davin mistakenly talked, and all the men's attention switched to them. The men asked what he was doing. Cheon coldly told them that he was his little brother, and that what they were doing was kidnapping. It turned out that the one who kidnapped the kid had brought him to these loan sharks as collateral, saying he was his nephew. Upon realizing this, the men couldn't just let them go because they might report them to the police. So they concluded that they would beat them and lock them up. Jun, upon hearing this, freaked out. He told Cheon they were in a mess and asked if they could even fight this many men. Cheon passed the kid to Jun and told him to get out of there with him. One of the men punched Cheon and Jun covered Davin's eyes. Cheon got pissed and asked why the hell he aimed for his face. My face is my only good feature. Are you going to pay the property settlement money? He asked, thinking to himself that he'd take a few blows so the others could escape. Just when one of them was about to punch him again, the main door opened, and Yoon Seom shouted at them not to hit her friend. Yoon Seom, darling. Finally, our pretty face is saved. All of Cheon's friends were with her. Upon seeing this, Jun was happy and wondered how she had managed to gather all of them. Cheon asked Yoon Seom why she had come in with them. Jun asked if Davin should go wait in the secret room. You little kids, do you think this is a playground? The man yelled and asked his men to beat them up. The fight began, and of course, the boys were plenty enough to deal with them. Soon, the police arrived and arrested the bad guys. Yoon Seom thanked them for helping because she didn't know what would have happened if they hadn't. The guys smiled happily, saying they were all friends and that it had been quite fun after a while. They also praised Yoon Seom for being amazing back there while fighting. She smiled, thinking to herself that if only she had a weapon, she would have handled them all by herself. Just then, Yoon Seom froze upon hearing Dajeong scold Davin. What did I tell you about talking to strangers? Talk more of following them, she yelled. Little Davin began crying, saying he only did that because the man promised him Dajeong, and no matter how much he begged her, she never agreed to buy him one when everyone else had it. Do you know how much other kids tease us, calling us beggars? I hate you, big sis. Davin cried out. Dajeong got teary upon hearing him say that and lamented how worried she had been, only for him to tell her this. I hate you too, Davin. If you're going to be like this, then go to another house, she yelled back. Cheon tapped her on the shoulder and smiled softly, saying that he understood how she felt, but she shouldn't say things she'd regret. That was when Dajeong realized what she had said. She hugged her brother and apologized. Davin felt sorry too and apologized. This family is so dramatic. Come to think of it, all their names start with the letter D. Dajeong, Dasol, and Davin. Seeing this, Yoon Seom was relieved. Cheon approached Seom, saying he'd take Dajeong and Dabin home, so she should go rest too because she had worked hard. Before she could say anything, Cheon rubbed his hand against her face and reminded her that comforting crying girls was his specialty. I'm telling you this so that you'll think of me when you want to cry. Flirty boy. He doesn't miss a chance to use his lines. He teased her by saying she should go home and not follow anyone who says they'll buy her something delicious. What do you take me for? She asked. He replied that there was a chance she'd follow a stranger if they bought her kimchi stew. Oh yes, our girl loves that. Meanwhile, Dajeong watched them sadly and thought to herself that if it's Cheon, then maybe it's better. There she goes again. Am I the only one who misses seeing our male lead? Imagine if he had shown up. That would be so dramatic. Cheon Sion escorted Dajeong home while carrying Dabin, who had already fallen asleep. Dajeong thanked him for today and pointed out how embarrassing it was back there. She thanked him for making her stop talking badly to her brother and for finding them. Cheon told her it was fine and that she did all that because she was worried about her siblings. He added that she was indeed incredible for taking care of her younger ones this far. Dajeong was once again touched by his words and asked why he and Yoon Seom kept making her shy by saying such sweet things. Cheon told her that she was the gentle one and they were only reciprocating all she did. Hearing this, Dajeong became sad and told him she wasn't like that. Is something wrong? Cheon asked and insisted that she tell him so he could help her. She thought to herself that since it's Cheon, then she should tell him. Dajeong finally decided to tell him the truth. What could it be that has been eating her up? Things settled down for the twins, Dasol and Dabin. Dajeong had been the one looking after them since her grandma became ill. Yoon Seom could tell that things were really rough for Dajeong, and she wondered why she had never noticed. She wished she had paid more attention. Just then, Minja rushed in, shouting that there was huge news. Yoon Seom, you're not gonna believe this. Minju excitedly told them that Kim Gae-bin was transferring out. Dajeong was surprised and asked why. Minju told them she had no idea, but it was good because Kim Gae-bin had always picked fights with Yoon Seom every single day. Yoon Seom thought to herself that it was true and wondered why she'd even push someone down the stairs without thinking. Minju was glad she was leaving because she had always tried to stick close to Haewon, but now she was glad Haewon was taken. Minju was the happiest of them all. Yoon Seom told her they all needed to know that she was now officially dating Haewon. Minju made her promise to buy them tteokbokki. Dajeong watched how happy they were but felt sad. Just then, Yoon Seom's phone rang. She picked it up immediately, wondering if it was Haewon, but it was Kim Gae-bin sending her a message to meet up. She wondered why and decided to go see her. Immediately Gae-bin saw her. She smirked and said she looked good and that it must be because of Haewon, right? Is this why she called her here? To tease her again? Yoon Seom frowned and asked if she had dragged her there only for this instead of apologizing. Since you're not apologizing, I'm leaving, Seom said as she turned away. But Gae-bin called out to her to please wait. Her expression turned sad, and Yoon Seom wondered why she seemed upset about something. I heard you're transferring. Why are you leaving? Seom asked. Gae-bin angrily shouted that it was because of him. Him? Who? She grabbed Seom and shouted that if she didn't transfer, then Haewon would end her life. Seom asked what she was talking about and why she was dragging Haewon into this. Kim Gae-bin tried to confirm if she had really come alone and added that she didn't like her, but she hated Haewon even more. That guy is really messed up, she said, thinking to herself that after all this, it was the only way she could get back at him. Yoon Seom called her shameless for saying that because if anyone should hate someone, then it should be Haewon, since she and her friends had bullied him all this while. Gae-bin yelled, asking who she thought tormented who. She told Seom that Haewon was the one who approached them at the beginning of the semester. He showed them a lot of his designer stuff and talked about how tired he was of all the attention. Yoon Seom was surprised and asked what Haewon had been thinking when he did that. Kim Gae-bin told her she never understood why he'd do that. She yelled that she knew it didn't make sense and that it gave her chills. Yoon Seom coldly told her not to talk badly about her boyfriend. She couldn't believe that after locking them up in the equipment room, she still had the guts to come and talk trash about him. Kim Gae-bin looked surprised. Equipment room? You two were locked in the equipment room, she asked. Yoon Seom told her to stop pretending because she had done way worse things, even pushing her down the stairs. Kim Gae-bin shouted angrily, admitting that she pushed her down the stairs, but she didn't lock her and Haewon in the equipment room. It wasn't me. I'm already getting dumped and dragged through the mud. Why would I lie? Yoon Seom thought she was right. There was no need for her to deny what she had done. But then she wondered who had locked them up that day. Too bad it turned out that Dajeong was the one who locked Haewon and Yoon Seom in the equipment room that day. OMG. All this is totally messed up. Dajeong told Cheon the truth about locking Haewon and Yoon Seom in the equipment room and also taking the squirrel carrying off her bag and giving it to Haewon. He even made her tell him everything that had been going on with Yoon Seom. Cheon was surprised to hear that she had even gotten close to Yoon Seom because of Haewon's orders. It was all his doing, she said sadly. She shouted that she liked Yoon Seom now because she had gotten to know her. She did all that because she thought Haewon liked her and really wanted to get close to her. But the whole thing got scary when Haewon began threatening her to get enough information and also using her grandma. He even paid for her grandma's hospital bills, which was the only way they were able to get her surgery done. She was grateful for that, but she really didn't know what to do. Dajeong broke into tears, telling Cheon that she knew he liked Yoon Seom. Cheon replied that it was indeed a straight punch. Dajeong told him she also knew that if it wasn't for Yoon Seom, he wouldn't have run around today to find the kids and during the festival too. I really want things to work out between you and Yoon Seom so that she'll distance herself from Haewon, she said sadly. What the hell is going on exactly? I can't believe she really did all that. Why is she even telling Cheon of all people? If she really does feel sorry for our girl, then she should have told her. Ugh, this is so frustrating. Cheon sat alone in the school premises, thinking to himself how unhinged Haewon was, even more than he had thought. Though he had been suspecting him all this while, now there was no way he was leaving Yoon Seom with that psycho. His face lit up, and he thought that he wasn't trying to steal anyone's girl. Come on, Cheon, he mumbled, thinking to himself that he was indeed glad that he was finally getting a shot. Our poor Yoon Seom. He thinks all this is about him getting a shot? Come on. Meanwhile, Haewon was at the window looking at him and thinking to himself with a creepy smile that no matter how much he struggled, he wouldn't be able to change anything. Not even now. Just like in the novel. Oh my, this is huge. So Cheon was in the novel too? Oh no. I can't believe this. And this is how season 1 ends? With such suspense? And with this, season 1 of For Your Perfect Ending comes to an end. Watch out for season 2.